I saw that there was a piece of land flooding, and for them to build a house on that land, they had to dig around the land and build a place to build a house. So around the house was like a big trench, and the children had to take off their shoes, walk out to get the road. I thank Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not criticizing. My parents stayed here and gave us freedom. And if I don't make a good presentation, forgive me, I didn't prepare to sit here right now, okay? I was caught in surprise. Anyhow, all in hands of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can see this says that if you love my Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah will love you. Like all the previous prophets, we have leaders, and Jannah is a place after life. But Jannah is open for you if you follow your leaders in the way you worship the Creator, Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. हर दर्द की दवा है सल्ले अला मुहम्मद तावीज़ हर बला है सल्ले अला मुहम्मद हर दर्द की दवा है सल्ले अला मुहम्मद तावीज़ हर बला है सल्ले अला मुहम्मद महबूब किबरिया है सल्ले अला मुहम्मद क्या नक्श कुश नमा है सल्ले अला मुहम्मद कुर्बे खुदा हो हासिल जन्नत में हो दाखिल जिसने लिखा पढ़ा है सल्ले अला मुहम्मद जन्नत मकाम होगा दोज़ख हराम होगा हर दिल पे लिख लिया है सल्ले अला मुहम्मद उसकी निजात होगी रहमत भी साथ होगी जो पर के मर गया है सल्ले अला मुहम्मद हर दर्द की दवा है सल्ले अला मुहम्मद तावीज़ हर बला है सल्ले अला मुहम्मद सल्ले अला मुहम्मद. Darud Sharif is a positive cure for all sickness and pains. Peace be unto Prophet Muhammad, the beloved of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is a duty imposed on all Muslims to render Darud Sharif with love and affection to the Holy Prophet. The passport to attain nearness to Almighty Allah and to enjoy the beautiful gardens in the hereafter bliss in heaven can be obtained through Darud Sharif. Indeed, the writing of Darud Sharif should be embedded in the hearts of all true people in this world. Thank you very much.
As most of you will know, Indian immigrants arrived on the shores of the then British Guiana on the 5th of May, 1838, just over 179 years ago. The first ship, we call them the Coolie Ships, because they were coolies who were coming, they were laborers, that set sail from India, from Mata, was the ship Whitby, which sailed from Calcutta, or now Kolkata, on the 10th of January 1838, and 16 days later, the Hesperus sailed. Both arrived on the same day. The Whitby arrived early in the morning of the 5th of May, while the Hesperus arrived late into the night of the 5th, or very possibly very early in the morning of the 6th. But essentially they arrived on the same, within 24 hours of each other. And they brought the first set of Indian immigrants, mainly indentured laborers. There is a misconception that all of the Indians who came on the Whitby and the Hesperus were indentured laborers. This is not so. There is also a misconception that the total amount of Indian immigrants that came on the Whitby and the Hesperus was 396. This again is not so. This is just a subset. And this will be quickly explained to you as we go through the slides. So as you can see, it's glimpses of Indo-Guyanese history in 20 minutes. By me, I'm an executive member, founding executive member of what was then Indian Arrival Committee, and in 2015 the name was changed to the Indian Action Committee. Outside of being a member of the IAC, I am now in my 20th year as a lecturer at the University of Guyana Turkine campus in the Faculty of Technology, teaching geology, geological engineering, and civil engineering. But history is my hobby. It was my best subject ever when I went to Berbice High School. I had a distinction in it, probably 100%. So here we go. First slide, please. Here we have the Governor of British Guiana just before the Indians came. He died shortly, but he was the governor during the time when the planters were arranging to bring Indian laborers. And this is Sir James Carmichael Smythe. He died here, as you can see, on the 4th of March, 2 months before the Indians arrived. He basically would have been the governor from 1833, around the time of the abolition of slavery, and throughout the entire period of apprenticeship. Incidentally, he was a veteran of the Peninsular Campaign during the Napoleonic Wars, and he was the chief of the Royal Engineers at the Battle of Waterloo as a colonel in the staff of the Duke of Wellington, Fort Wellington, named after the Duke. Next slide, please. Now here we have the Whitby and the Hesperus. Now this was called the Gladstone experiment, after one John Gladstone, a merchant of Liverpool, who was the father of the future Prime Minister of Britain, William Ewart Gladstone, 4 times PM of Britain. Now, when the Gladstone experiment began, 440 persons left India. The history books will tell you 437, but it's actually 440. The Whitby arrived in the morning of the 5th with 266 immigrants. You'll see the history books telling you all sorts of other strange numbers like 244 and 249. Those are incorrect. The Coolie Ship Hesperus arrived with 157. The Whitby coolies were allotted the plantations Highbury on the east bank of the Berbice River, Waterloo on the west coast of Berbice, and Bellevue on the west bank of the Demerara River. The Hesperus coolies were allotted the plantations Bridenhoop and the Vredestein on the west bank of the Demerara River, and at Anna on what was then called the Arabian coast, the Essequibo coast, or the Arabisi coast. So you could see that the original indentured laborers were distributed to all 3 counties of Guyana, or then British Guiana, because British Guiana became a united colony in 1831. So there you have Berbice, Demerara, and Essequibo having allotments. Next slide, please. And here we have John Gladstone, the man who began it, Sir John Gladstone. You can see he lived for very, very long. He was 87 years old when he died. And he was the former owner of plantations met in Mersor, Success, Bridenhoop, Vredestein, and Wales. But very early into the indentureship, he sold these estates. So by 1840, he didn't have any estates left. Next slide, please. Now, these are how the first laborers, or the first immigrants, were allotted. Highbury, 135. Bellevue, 84. Anna Regina, Hook 70, and Regina 56, Waterloo 47, Vredestein 31. Vredestein no longer exists, it's under bush or cultivation now. So you can see that the total amount of persons allotted, meaning arrived here alive, 423. It means that 17 died at sea. And you'll find that 4 of the persons who came on the Whitby died at sea, including 3 adult males and 1 child, and 13 died aboard the Hesperus, 11 from cholera, and 2 of them jumped overboard. Next slide, please. So here now we're going to clear up some of the errors. The total amount of Indians landed alive, 423. The number of male Christian Anglo-Indian interpreters / superintendents were 6, because there were 6 estates, and these 6 persons were the interpreters between the indentured laborers or coolies and the overseers and managers. There were 21 children who accompanied the adults. And now you see the famous number of 396. The number of Indian indentured laborers was 396. So when you have to add up the 396 plus the 21 plus the 6, and you get 423. So this research was done by the Indian Action Committee. We have had access to the British parliamentary papers of 1839 and 1840, and from those records we were able to do this work and produce these new numbers. So after 179 years, we can now have the corrected numbers. The number of male indentured laborers was 382. The number of female indentured laborers was 14. So 382 and 14 makes the 396. The number of married female laborers, so 13 persons came married. 13 males and females were married when they landed here. So you can see that the number of unmarried female laborers is 1. Right? So now, if you look at the number of males, adult males, you have 382 plus 6. The 6 interpreters, that's 388 adult males, of which 13 were married. So if you subtract 13, you have 375 adult males for 1 adult female for 5 years of indentureship. So you can understand what happened there. By 1840, you had the first records of what we call Douglas being born in British Guiana. Because you can't expect 375 adult males to be celibate for 5 years. Next slide, please. Now here we have a record of the actual ships. There are many, many Guyanese. If you ask them how many ships came from India, they say 2. The Whitby and the Hesperus. You know, the Whitby and the Hesperus alone brought 239,000 people. Many, many Guyanese are believe only these 2 ships came, bringing all these people. But in fact, 245 Coolie ships came, and they made a total of 534 voyages from India to British Guiana across the Kalapani. And once they crossed the Kalapani, they lost their caste, so they were immediately casteless from the time they set foot on a ship on the ocean. Just over 239,000 immigrants were transported by these 245 ships. There are about 5 or 6 numbers as to the actual total. So the IAC is also working to get the correct number, because you can only have 1 correct number of the total amount of people. You can have 6. As you see, 2 Coolie ships arrived in 1838, the Whitby and the Hesperus. And then during the second period of transportation of indentured laborers from 1845 to 1848, there was a lull after 1848 when there was a shortage of capital to pay the merchants in Liverpool, etc. 34 Coolie ships came between 1845 and 1848, and they made a total of 44 voyages. Then there was an unbroken stream of indentured laborers and others between 1851 and 1970. 209 Coolie ships made 488 voyages during this time. Next slide, please. Now, as I said before, many people think only the Whitby and the Hesperus came. But here, we have ships that made 10 voyages. The Foyle came here 10 times. The Jura came here 10 times. The steamship Sutlej, SS, means steamship, they also sailing ships, came 10 times. The Brenda and the Sheila, 9 times each. The Elba, the SS Ganges, there were 2 of them. The Lena, the Main and the River came 8 times. The Allen Shaw, the Pan, the Clarence, the Ganges one, which is a sailing ship, and the Mersey came 7 times. The SS Chenab, the Ems, the Fort, the Ganges 2, the Howrah, the SS Indus, and the North came 6 times. So in all, I said there were 245 of these ships. Next slide, please. Now, pictures of some of the owners. These are 2 very famous owners, George Sandbach and James Tinney. There was a firm called Sandbach and Tinney. Some of you may have heard of Sandbach Parker. Now, Sandbach, the family Sandbach, he is a member, or was a member, is a member, J.R. Sandbach. They had a monopoly for about 3 years in the late 1870s to transport Indians here. They were followed by another company that was, I think they had a 5-year contract. And finally, the James Nurse Company, from 1883-84 all the way to 1917, had a contract to transport Indian laborers. Next slide, please. Now here we'll have a look at some of the ships. You'll see in many publications, whether in magazines or in the local newspapers, you'll see images of ships purporting to be the Whitby and the Hesperus. There are no images of the Whitby and the Hesperus. But there are images like this, historical ones you can find on the internet. This is the Brenda, right? Which I said came 9 times. Next slide, please. This is the Ailsa. Next one. This is the Brenda and Jura dock in Calcutta. Next slide, please. This is the Volga, named after Russian river. Next slide, please. This is the Arno. Next slide. This is the Mersey. This is the Allen Shaw, very famous ship. This was considered to be the most beautiful of these Coolie ships. Next slide, please. Now, that is Allen Shaw. It was owned by the James Nurse Line. It made 7 voyages to British Guiana. And you can see it was an iron sailing ship, 1,589 tons, 263 feet long. First came here on the 17th of December 1884, last arrival in 1891, and then it was wrecked in 1893 in some reefs on the place. Next slide, please. Here's the Avon, and a few details of the Avon next. Again, owned by the Nurse Line. As I said, the Nurse Line had the monopoly between the sailing season 1884 until the last ship, the Ganges, arrived on the 18th of April 1917, 100 years ago. And this anniversary, this centenary, is one of the reasons we are having this symposium here today. The Avon made 4 voyages between 1893 and 1900. Next slide, please. The Coolie Ship Moy, and you can see again owned by the famous Nurse Line, 4 voyages, iron ship, almost the same length as the other one. It came between the 1900, 1905, and then there's a very interesting note here. In February 1905, on the way to Liverpool from British Guiana, she disappeared at sea, never to be seen again. The Moy. Several ships, this was a hazard of being a sailor or somebody working a ship. You could disappear, never to be seen again, like in the Bermuda Triangle. Next slide, please. This is the SS Ganges 2. This is not the SS Ganges 1, which brought the last set of laborers in April 1970. But this was a return ship that repatriated Indians, especially in the 1920s and the 1930s. And on this ship, the very famous Guyanese doctor, Jung Bahadur Singh, J.B. Singh, was the doctor on this ship, taking people back to India. Next slide, please. Now here is a very famous photograph. You'll see this in many books of coolies disembarking one of the ships. This is how they look like when they came. Next slide, please. Here's a historic picture of Indian immigrants. Next slide, please. Musicians. Next slide is from Trinidad. The Indian immigrants in the late 1800s. Next slide, please. And these are kinds of dwellings that they would have lived in. Inhabited. Next slide, please. Many of you would probably know this type of logi. Next slide, please. And these were cottages at Plantation Diamond. We call these ranges. Next slide, please. Blaymont, Plantation Blaymont. They're becoming more modern. Now we come into some historical figures. This gentleman here is probably the most famous Indo-Guyanese of the 19th century. His name was Viraswamy Mudaliar. He was a zamindar of the Hussain settlement, which was the first experimental settlement. The land was given to Indians in lieu of return passages. So they wanted Indians to stay here. And Mudaliar was the zamindar. He was actually born here in Guyana. His parents came from India. And he became a very successful businessman. By the time of his death in 1913, he was a gold miner. He was one of the first Indians to go and mine gold. But before that, he was a businessman. His son was another prominent Guyanese, the late magistrate John Aloysius Virasamy. Next slide, please. Here we have one of the first millionaires of the then British Guiana. I'm talking before the First World War. He was born in 1869, of Indian parentage. So he would be the first generation. Joshua Ramphel. Now here is one of Joshua Ramphel's cousins, Esther Mahadeo and her children. Before the First World War, the widowed Esther Mahadeo was the first woman president of the Burmese Chamber of Commerce. This is over 100 years ago. She was a businesswoman after the death of her husband, Mahadeo Misra, in 1903. He died in 1903. She was, at that time, 31 years old with these 4 children. And she inherited her husband's business. And she managed it until her death in 1948, born in 1872, died in 1940. And something significant about her is that when the Rose Hall Estate massacre occurred, in which 15 indentured laborers, all born in India, were killed by colonial police under the direct command of the Inspector General George Casper de Rinzi. This is the kind of name given for the Commission Police, the Inspector General Police. She rode her carriage. She crossed the Burmese River and rode her carriage herself all the way on those brick roads to Georgetown to make an official complaint to the governor, Esther Mahadeo, a very strong woman. Now, this is Esther Mahadeo's son-in-law. Her eldest daughter was married to Joseph Alexander Laku, King's Counsel. He was born in Amsterdam, but he attended Queen's College. And went to Britain to study law in the year 1909, came back to British Guiana in 1912, but didn't go back to New Amsterdam to practice because his elder brother was already practicing as an attorney, the late Edward Alfred Laku, who was the very first Guyanese to become a qualified solicitor in the year 1899. So since his elder brother was in New Amsterdam, he came to Georgetown. And at the age of 36, in 1923, he was elevated to the position or the title of KC, King's Counsel. He was the second youngest Guyanese ever, after Sidney Van Sertima, a Guyana scholar, to be raised to a KC. In his entire career, he defended 100 murderers, and he got off 98. The other 2 hung. In the latter part of his career, he became a puisne judge, again the first Indo-Guyanese to achieve judgeship. And at his death in 1949, he was the acting Chief Justice of British Guiana, Joseph Alexander Locke. Here we have, as I mentioned before, the doctor on those last ships, Dr. Jung Bahadur Singh, the first person to be cremated in then British Guiana in 1956. Before that, all Hindus were buried. But he fought for cremation, and he got it. Dr. J.B. Singh. He was born at a place called Good Fortune on the west bank of Demerara, one of about a dozen children. His father came from Nepal, and his mother was from somewhere in India. So he was part Nepalese, and for many years he was the president of the British Guiana East Indian Association for many years. And this picture is taken on the Independence Day of India in 1947. It was celebrated here, and as you can see, the trellis at the back still exists today, not too far from here, at what is known as the Everest Cricket Club. You can still see it. You go up there at the back, the step going upstairs. So this picture was taken at what was then called the British Guiana East Indian Cricket Club, now known as the Everest Cricket Club in Thomas Lands, right? A short walk from here. And that was on Independence Day of India, 1947. Next slide, please. Here we have Dr. Singh and the extreme right sitting. His brother, the Solicitor Mangal Singh, sitting at extreme left in the photograph, and other members of the British Guiana East Indian Executive. This picture was taken in the 1920s. So these were the prominent Indians of the day in the 1920s. Again, another picture. Dr. Singh now, he's the shortest in the second row standing. His brother is sitting extreme right. And in this picture also, sitting second from right is Dr. William Hewley Wharton, the first Indo-Guyanese to qualify as a medical doctor in 1899, a graduate of Edinburgh University. So he's with a bow tie, Dr. William Hewley Wharton. Here we have Dr. Singh's wife, Alice Bhagwande Singh, a Surinamese who came here. They got married in 1910, but she spent the rest of her life in British Guiana. And she had formed the British Guiana Dramatic Society. And her daughter, again, is a very famous Guyanese, the late Rajkumari Singh. You know, the Rajkumari Singh Center in New York. And her grandson, again, is the late Gora Singh, who was an Indian classical dancer. And there are many prominent persons of this family. Of Dr. Singh's grandson is the current retired Justice Jainarain Singh. Next slide, please. Here is Mrs. Singh sitting in the center with members of her dramatic group, taken in the 1930s. Now here we have the late Mr. Dwarkanath, who wrote the first history book of East Indians. It was first published in the year 1950 and republished in 1970. He died in Britain. He worked most of his life with what was then called the Immigration Department, Mr. Dwarkanath. So many statistics that are even used today in 2017 are taken from his work. Next slide, please. Well, you don't have to explain who these are. Next slide, please. Now here we have, again, on the Independence Day of India, in 1947, at what is now the Everest Cricket Ground, we have the executives of the British Guiana East Indian Association. And in the very center, you can see Dr. Jung Bahadur Singh, the president of the then British Guiana East Indian Association. Now, the youngest member of the BGEIA is sitting at extreme left. Can you identify him? Extreme left, way over there, is the youngest member then, in 1947, of the British Guiana East Indian Association. Any of you can figure out who that is? That is Dr. Chetty Japan. That time a member of the BGEIA. Next slide, please. During the famous suspension of the Constitution, I had to put this one in. Here was Dr. Alfred William Longley Savage, then Governor of British Guiana. Next slide, please. Now we go to some prominent pictures of some prominent Guyanese in very many fields. Still alive at the age of almost 89 is Sir Sridak Ramphal, who spent 5 years at Berbice High School, the alma mater of the Honourable Minister and myself, before he came to Queen's College. Next slide, please. The Angry God. Some of you must have heard of the Angry God, the most fair judge when I was a schoolboy. The criminals who appeared in front of him used to fall down from fear in his court. Mr. Justice Akbar Khan. He was known as, no one called him Akbar Khan, they call him the Angry God. Next slide, please. Well, here we have a famous couple, Mr. and Mrs. Edward Balkaran Bihari, and their bank is right behind us, the GBTI, across the road. And you have Naliko, Nafiko, and many other industries. Again, 89 years old, another very prominent Guyanese, Dr. Yesu Persaud. Next slide, please. Mr. Sattar Ghafoor, still battling it out in the world of commerce. You don't have to say who this is. Haji Roshan Khan. Mr. Rafi Khan, very, very famous broadcaster. The late Mr. Ayub Hamid Khan. Again, another very famous broadcaster, legendary. I don't have to explain who this is. The greatest batsman Guyana has ever produced to this day, in spite of the heroics of Shivnarayan Chakrapal. Another very famous batsman from Port Morant, Alvin Caltran. The second highest run aggregate West Indian after Gordon Greenwich. That is Alvin Caltran, 32,950 runs. Sheikh Fawad Bakas, who made 250 runs in a test match in India. Timur Mohamed, unfortunately, didn't make the test side, but a very, very good batsman. And of course, you know who this is. He's actually playing today against Yorkshire. Yorkshire batted yesterday, they're not out, so he may get some batting today. Now, some famous academics. Here we have Dr. Mahadeo Mangru, now in New York, has written many, many books. Dr. Mahadeo Mangru, that's one of them. Our most famous historian of Indo-Guyanese extracts. Right? Our Guyana's most famous historian is the late Dr. Walter Radhay. And then comes Dr. C. Charan. Another historian, the late Dr. Bisnath, who was a minister of government for many years. I think he was Minister of Education too. That's his PhD thesis, published, The Settlement of Indians in Guyana, 1890-1930. A Guyanese who died in Britain, Dr. C. Kumar, he wrote two very important books I think all Guyanese should read. This is one, Democratic Advance and Conflict Resolution in Post-Colonial Guyana. Every single Guyanese must read this book. Next slide, please. Very famous author, Peter Lakshmanan Kempaduk, who wrote Guyana Boy, and so he's still alive. I believe he's now in his 90s, living in Britain. Minister of the Government, Guyana Scholar, Minister of Education, who unfortunately could not be here today. He wanted to be here. In addition to being a Guyana Scholar and Minister of Education, he is also a very famous off-spin bowler, played for Cambridge University. The late Miss Mahadeo Das, tragic poet, died young. She was a member of the National Service. She was also a beauty queen, a Miss Diwan. Writer and poet, author and poet, Mrs. Cyril Gabedin, a professor at the University of Toronto, from Berbice. Sister Ryan Persaud, another, I think a winner of the Guyana Prize, the brother of Pitamba Persaud, who I expected to see here today. Dr. Chiromani Biswandayal, another prominent writer, I think now in Fiji, has written many books. Next slide, please. Rupal Monar, who is known by his friends as Professor Bulbulu, another famous writer. Well, I don't have to explain who this is. The record winner of the Guyana Prize. I think on 5 occasions he has won the Guyana Prize in Literature. Professor Dr. David Abedin, a New Amsterdamer like myself, went to Raymon Zervin Dublin School, then went to Queen's College and then migrated. PhD from Cambridge University. Dr. Narmala Shucharan in the States. She is the sister of Mr. Justice Darshan Ramdani of the High Court of Grenada and sister of former magistrate Hemant Ramdani of Guyana. Haris Chandra Kemraj, a winner of the Guyana Prize. Another winner of the Guyana Prize, you know him? And you all recognize this gentleman here, the current Prime Minister. With his book, Henry's Cure, Mrs. Ryan Shaw, author of 3 books, working on our 4th. Next slide, please. Mr. Khalil Rahman Ali from West Coast, Demerara, now living in Britain, who has now written his 3rd book. And they all deal with the Indian experience in British Guiana from indenture to the present. What is called the Domino Masters or something. Here we have Mr. Ruben Lachman Singh of West Coast Babis, part of the famous Lachman Singh family, many of them in the pharmacy business. He took up writing at a young age of 80. He has now written 2 books. He played competitive cricket to the age of 77 in Canada with hardball, and was very agile. When you see him, he looks like 50 years old, and he's about 85. He still, still plays some bumper ball. A very famous Guyanese resident in the United States, Mrs. Gaitra Mahadeo, with her very famous book, came out a few years ago, Coolie Woman, The Odyssey of Indentured. And basically, as I said, these are a few glimpses. If I were to go into the whole history, it will take till next year. But in time to come, I'll make some additions. So, Shukriya, Dhanyawad, thank you for looking at these brief glimpses.
I would like to open the session with a call by Malcolm Gillett. Today, more than ever before in human history, the wealth or poverty of nation depends on the quality of higher education. Those with a larger repertoire of skill and a greater capacity for learning can look forward to lifetimes of unprecedented economic fulfillment. Simply indicates the importance of education in development of any country. Next slide. I've collected some data for you regarding the growth of private universities worldwide. You can see the data. It's from World Higher Education Database. In 1944, there were 1,436 universities, and by 2015, there are more than 10,000 universities. In Asia, it was 340, and in 2015, it is more than 3,459. In Europe, 101, and 2015, it is more than 1,353. In North America, it's quite high to start with, 924, and in 2015, it is 2,526. Surprisingly, Latin America and Caribbean, there's only 60 universities that were back in 1944, but in 2015, there were more than 2,437, a significant and dramatic change compared to the growth in other parts of the world. And then coming to Africa with 7, and they grew up to 972, Oceania from 4 to 62. It is pretty sure that in the Latin American Caribbean, there has been a dramatic improvement in education sector. Next slide. Coming to the data in Guyana, I took this from the National Accreditation Council website. There are only 15 higher education institutions listed on the website which are registered with the National Accreditation Council, but it does not include the public university here. Next slide. I would like to speak upon the Texila's contribution to the education sector in Guyana. The vision of the university is to be the center of excellence in higher education. See there. And also to focus on research and innovation, which meets the aspirations of the global community. The next slide. To just go through the mission, to redefine and revolutionize international education by offering updated, modern, excellent training in areas of health sciences, information and communication technology, management, education, applied science, and all possible areas that the learner seeks to engage with Texila American University. Next slide. To observe the highest standards of ethics, integrity, and compassionate care for students and community at large. To make Guyana proud of being the most sustainable region of the world through creating, disseminating, and applying actionable health knowledge. These are our visions and mission. To briefly talk about the growth of Texila American University in Guyana, we come into the year 2010. We started very small in Sukrishnalall Labor College with just 7 students. That was way back in 2010. And then as we grew up, we had to find a bigger place, and we moved to Sparentum. We rented a place there, and then we grew up to about 300 to 400 students. That place wasn't sufficient enough for us, and we built our own magnificent campus in Providence this year. Currently, we have more than 600 students enrolled with us, and they have all come from different parts of the world. And we have students from more than 35 countries currently. This is the new campus, a beautiful campus, which is situated in Providence, closer to the Guyana Cricket Stadium and British Hotel. Next slide. This is the first block, the entrance to the building. Next slide. This is our multi-D laboratory. Our exams are generally conducted online, and students use these labs for the exams and also to use their digital media resources. The next slide. This is one of the classrooms which was taken at the preliminary stages. Next slide. And this is the second block where we have a library there. The programs are offered in Texila. We offer primarily Doctor of Medicine, which is 4.5 years and 5.5 years. 4.5 years is for those who have done the CAPE qualification. They start with 6 months of pre-medical program and they go into 4 years of medical program. And 5.5 years is for those who come with CXC. They do 1.5 years or 3 semesters of pre-medical program, and they will continue to the Doctor of Medicine program. And we also offer Bachelor in Nursing, the BSN, and RN to BSN, which is an upgradation program. Those who have RN qualification can upgrade to Bachelor of Science in Nursing. And we also offer RN to BSN, Work Integrated Learning Program. This is specifically designed for those who are employed nurses who are employed can do this program. We have weekend classes, and during the week, they can access the classes through learning management system, or they can study online. Next slide. A brief for details about the program structure. The medical program is broadly divided into two phases. The first phase, first 2 years, comprises of pre-clinical. In pre-clinical, students study the basic sciences, basic medical sciences and community medicine. Subjects like anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, pathology, microbiology, and so on and so forth are taught in the first 2 years. And in preclinical, again, they have a categorization of preclinical and paraclinical. And after completion of the preclinical, they'll have to undergo a preclinical exit exam. After completion of the preclinical exit exam, they will go into the clinical rotation. The clinical rotation or the clinical training is for 2 years, or 80 weeks in Guyana or 32 weeks in US. Students can go to US, Guyana, and Philippines. In Guyana, students are posted in GPHC for the clinical training. We also have MOU with various other government hospitals in New Amsterdam and with the Veteran Hospital. The next slide. Well, we have successfully completed 3 batches of passed out so far. Last year on December 10th, we had the graduation, the 3rd graduation. And our Honorable Prime Minister was guest of honor of the program. And our students, to the next slide. Students those who passed out, those who graduated, are currently doing a residency in US. About 3 of them are doing residency in US. In the specialty like psychiatry, internal medicine and family medicine. And a couple of them have gone back to India, they've taken the licensing exam and both of them passed, and they're doing the house surgency. Similarly, those who went back to Nigeria, 4 of them, they have also cleared the licensing exams and they are doing the house surgency in Nigeria. And in India, in Guyana, students those who have completed the course are registered with Medical Council of Guyana, and they are currently, 10 of them are doing their internship in GPSA. This is one of the significant accomplishments for Texila. And we are very proud that all the students who went back to India and Nigeria, 100% pass percentage were there in the licensing exam. So it shows the quality of their education imparted through Texila. The next one. Well, why Texila is very important and very different from other universities? We have some significant reasons over here. We are not offshore university, we are international university based in Guyana. Because generally the offshore university focus on training students to send them to US or prepare them for US MLEs. So we don't focus only on US. We have a curriculum which is also suitable for practicing in the Caribbean. We emphasize more on community medicine and research. Our focus is to develop doctors who can treat patients, compassionately treat the poor and rich alike, both in the Caribbean, in Guyana and the Caribbean, and in other countries from where they belong to. And our emphasis on research, I would like to expand a little bit on this. Starting from the MD3 level, that is from the second year onward, they focus on research. We try to build capacity in doing research. They work on something like article review, they review articles, which is a mandatory requirement. And of late, we have also formed various research committees, and students start doing research as early as in the first year. And use of technology, one of the reasons for us to grow very fast was the use of technology. We are a highly technical oriented and technology backed up university. We have various programs like the learning management system, ERP, which is for the data management, CRM, which is process-oriented, DMS for again document management, and other e-resources. The learning management system, we are pretty strong on that. All our learning materials, classes are held through the learning management system. We use a platform called Moodle. More than 80 million people are using Moodle as of now worldwide. We are also using Moodle. Students can learn from the learning management system, and even the examinations are conducted through the learning management system. The next one is like adhering to the quality process. We have a strong quality assurance team which emphasizes on the process and the policies, and periodical auditing is being conducted to ensure the quality of the delivery of the program. And we are also strongly supported by international faculty members. We have faculty from the Philippines, India, Nepal, and then prominent faculty members from Guyana as well. And of course, the clinical training, as of now, we offer clinical training in different parts of the world, in the US, primarily in Chicago, and the Philippines, one of the largest medical university in the Philippines. We have a MOU with them. And of course, in Guyana at GPMC. Next slide. Well, the Texila American University did impact. TA was contributed significantly to the education sector in Guyana. It has grown as one of the largest private American university in Guyana, and it has invested more than multi-billion dollars in Guyana in infrastructure. And significantly, we also offer 50% scholarship to the Guyanese students, and offer employment from various sectors, which could be direct or indirect employment. Next slide. The economic impact. It offers more than $100 billion benefit in the form of scholarship every year to the local population. And we spend more than $120 million for training of students locally in different health facilities. And more than 450 plus staff live in rented house, thereby benefiting the local community. Next slide. And there are direct and indirect taxes. Other businesses are raising out of the foreign students coming into Guyana, and then more spending into the local market. And then we envision that Guyana to become a destination for education tourism. And I think we are very much almost there. The future plans, we have plans to commence various other programs at bachelor's, master's, and PhD level. We have already applied for these programs on information technology, management, public health program, and we also intend to adopt villages around Providence to provide healthcare facilities, and also we have plans to work on telemedicine. Next slide. But to achieve all of these, we definitely need the support of our well-wisher, and we thank the government of Guyana for constantly supporting us in all our endeavors at all levels, and we also thank the people of Guyana and to other private organizations who have been very supportive to us and other stakeholders. Well, I would like to end my presentation with another quote by Nelson Mandela. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Well, I think we are focused on stepping up forward and making a mark in Guyana in the education sector. Thank you for listening to the presentation. Thank you, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we are assembled here to probably, as Evan started, look at the road we have walked, the roads that our foreparents walked on, and to probably ask ourselves, how far have we come? It's been 100 years since the abolition of indentureship, and so sometimes we are tempted to ask ourselves to examine our advancements. 100 years after indentureship, of which, let me say this very clearly, 100 years of after indentureship, of which 50 years have been self-rule, of which almost half has been ruled by an Indo-Guyanese party. The state of Indianness, therefore, is no fault of anyone. I would like to spend a couple minutes, as I propose to the team, to look at the identity and perspective. What is this identity that we call Indian or Indo-Guyanese? What is this thing that we sometimes brag about? Is it the color of our skin and the texture of our hair? Maybe not, because many of us are dark and have different types of hair. Maybe not, because according to the white man, if you're not white, you're black. And maybe not, because we're never satisfied looking the way we are. So what is it? What is this Indianness? Is it culture? Is it religion? Is it family? Is it lineage? Sometimes we care to think that it is the family togetherness, a notion that is quickly evaporating against a backdrop of so-called leaders who do not place any importance on family structures. It used to be that a family, an Indian family, was recognized because they prayed together. But today we see that we spend more time drinking together than praying together. The temples and churches have less togetherness than the bars and clubs do. So where is this identity that we want to identify with? What is the perspective that we can follow towards finding this identity? Let us look at how we probably have allowed ourselves to be divided and ruled. Our religions became politically aligned and maligned. Our race became politically aligned and maligned. Our culture has become politically aligned and maligned. It has reached proportions where you're only Indian if you can belong to one party. Or you're only Hindu, Christian, and Muslim if you can belong to a particular Hindu, Christian, or Muslim grouping. And those groupings sit in the House of Representatives representing political interest over religious interest. And how did we get to this state? How did we get to this state when 100 years ago, if you wanted education, you had to have had an English-sounding name and recite prayers only of certain denominations? How much has changed? Today, when our religious schools try to assert religious standards in education, they're made to pay special taxes for being private schools so that the social ills are paid for according to the finance minister, And mind you, one of those social ills identified early on is salaries. Now, how united can we stand behind a school system and a social system that may not be aligned to politics or maligned with politics? And while we continue to be divided and ruled, I ask you to recognize that the stain of corruption strikes everyone. Today, 23 years later, every Indian is maligned as a corrupt person. And then there is the class struggle. Maybe years ago, we can recognize, many years ago, the days of the indomitable Cherry Jagan and my dad, Budra Mahadeo. The rallying cry was, let the small man be the real man. Today, political culture that has followed the small man has become the pedestal for those who call themselves the real men. And the ideals of the small man has been raped and pillaged so that the small man will forever remain a small man. My brother here showed us a wonderful slide. 100 years later, we stand and we sing the praise of all those who broke through the glass ceilings of race and gender But nobody is singing and talking about how much sugar was produced by the people who were running the factories, how much rice came out of this country. What did our foreparents do that lifted this land? And I say without any fear of favor. Sometimes we want to say we are Indian at the exclusion of other races. And you cannot be one race if you can exclude another. Because I always have said publicly, and I repeat today, thanks to those of other races who were here before my foreparents. Because if they hadn't showed my foreparents how to open those doors, how to walk through the dangers of plantation mannerism, we would not have survived. So we look at the days gone by, where there used to be political activism based on care for a country, that sadly became care for ego boosting. Many have conveniently forgotten the early days of struggle, when there was a movement across Guyana that was just below the surface, but it was vibrant, vigilant, and eventually victorious. But it is our inability as Indians to call a spade that has led to fallen heights. It is our fall from our own vision that we all became regaled to, choir boys of an uncaring regime. When we became a chorus, cheerleaders to those who massage their supremacy. Friends, I come from an Arya Samaj background, one with over 40 branches across the country, where we are builders, we are farmers, we are the ones who clean the drains and the toilets, the social workers. And what we have experienced in the Arya Samaj movement is a symptomatic of what is happening across, or what has happened across this country. Many may not know that in the 1970s, an Arya Samaj leader, his name was Panditushar Buddha Arya, was escorted out of this country because of his vigilance and his call for Guyanese to rise. His movement became akin to a paramilitary movement with nationalistic thinking. Yet, in that same struggling group, in those days, other branches came up from within the same Arya Samaj movement that praised things like national service and became responsible for the rape of our sons and daughters. What is our lot? I feel, friends, that political leanings need to be reassessed exactly for what it has done to us, because it has done nothing for us. Not for the Indian identity. Maybe it is time that we're brave enough to shake off the cheerleader uniform and call a spade a spade. Let me give you two examples. The Hindu Unite for Guyana group that has run the Pagwa event at the stadium for many, many years, they used to be penalized by certain ministers that if you're a Hindu, you can only belong to one group. So they said. And so millions were charged to run a free event at the stadium. That changed and became a nominal fee under another government. But then, there is another group that started a Hindu temple 2 years ago on the East Bank. They have had documents, they have had permits, but a current minister decided he wanted to stop that structure, and guess what? 2 years later, nothing has happened. What has changed? We need to ask, who will fight your fight? Some of them come to you for one thing only. They care not about your family or your identity. They want you to learn only one letter in the alphabet, and that is the X to put on the ballot sheet. And then they kick your factories, they rape your collective psyche, and they rush to masturbate their political ego. And they're the only ones that can lead, and they question every phrase in constitutions and in regulations, because only certain people can lead. And you know what? We accepted that because we regaled ourselves to the position of cheerleaders. I call on you. It is time to stop being cheerleaders of the wrongdoers. Those of you who are old enough might remember a movie that is called Mother India, where a mother picked up a weapon to shoot her own son because he was raping daughters in the village and he was being a corrupt person, and the mother said, "It is better I who give birth to you get rid of you than let you rape my daughters and children's future." When would such a leader arise? We have allowed people to hold, they hold and they have held the power, and they care only for themselves, and they amassed wealth. And I say to them that the amass will only grant you one thing and guarantee you one thing: a wonderfully attended funeral, nothing else. Meanwhile, where is the Indian destiny that was used to amass those things? Friends, sadly, and I say this today, my role is to bring a perspective of what's the truth, call a spade a spade. Sadly, what are Indians in Guyana becoming synonymous with? Domestic violence, suicide, alcoholism. And why have we allowed that to happen? When you have had years of leadership that you say it is your own, where political egos are the only ones that cared about their collective egos. So as I said before, it is time to identify where things have gone wrong. And let us stop being just the cheerleaders because of skin color and hair color and face the truth. Friends, our weddings have become unlicensed liquor shops. Our prayer sessions massage the egos of our priests and pundits instead of praise to God. Our political struggles massage the egos of the undeserving instead of looking after the rights of the small man. So where is the identity, I ask? What have we achieved as a people without political baggage? Can we identify one leader? Do we dare to? Many years ago, there was born a leader who voiced the cause of many Indo-Guyanese, and whose names and lessons have been trampled by the current followers who seek power without purity. Where is that leader, I ask, that we can follow, who care more about the people than their pockets? Where is that leader that can lead these peoples of this country, who care more about our country than their friends and family? Where is that leader who will walk with the Bible, Quran and Veda, who will walk with a good heart to lead his people? Let that leader rise. And friends, I can tell you what, that leader will only arise if we allow them to. Because the current system of politics stifles. You cannot rise if you do not belong to one of the parties, or if you cannot run and throw a mala over their heads and massage their political egos. So we need to free up that system and let leaders rise who can speak and represent the small man. As I said earlier, we are talking, yes, about all those who have broken through the ceilings of race and poverty and are millionaires and billionaires. It's good to talk about what they have achieved. What about the woman who's today standing in the rice field planting? What about the man who has to look after 5-6 children? What about that? And let me say this again. What about those? The state today has announced it is closing factories. I have no problem with your economic vision, but you have not announced what you plan to do with 15,000 people. So on one hand, you have taken away earning, and on the other hand, what are you offering? Yes, you don't want to be a state that you're giving away everything, but care for people. And I'm not saying current government alone has done it. Millions and millions of US dollars came for the sugar industry over the past 20 to 30 years. Not a cent was spent on the industry. Yes, we can speak about new factories. But factory don't produce sugar, friends. The ground produce sugar, and as I'm sure GAWU will be talking about that. Friends, I repeat, yes, we can close factories. What are we going to do with people? And at the same time, education costs has increased. University of Guyana increased their fees over 35% over the next 3 years. So when you're telling the small man, never hope for education, you're screwed anyhow, you're a small man. let us rise. Because they announced they're raising fees, 35% over 3 years, and next day they announced they're renting a fancy building so that they could build plush offices. And guess what? The other news that didn't get much debate is that government has backed that thing because ministries are also putting up offices in that building. Yes, it is the same building everybody used to think something has to do with me, and it's not. That too was political plant. Friends, it is time to call a spade a spade. We can sit and we can praise our leaders and we can do all kinds of things, but let us sit and talk about the lot of the person who is 4 years old, living in Esquebo or Berbice or the East Coast, and what vision can we plant for them? Because we are dead and gone, but our children will have to earn the fruits of what we are sowing today. So yes, can we identify a leader, and do we dare to? Because when you speak out, you earn a lot of love. Many years ago, as I said, we have had changes. Many years ago throughout our history, but most particularly from independence to now, all the changes you have had, let us assess how far have we come. So I ask again, can you find that Indian man or woman? Can you find that black man or woman? Can you find that Amerindian man or woman that we can love because they're willing to show us they care more for this country than their friends and family and many pockets? This is the perspective, friends, that I wish to offer, that we must build on. Because a people united can never be defeated. A culture united can never be divided. That ideal, unity, demanded in all the scriptures, that is the perspective that will take us forward. Friends, I call on all, let every ounce of alcohol we want to consume, that energy, put it towards productive work. Remember the hard work your foreparents did in building this country. Let us get to that stage where we can put that planting first, that cultivation first, and not just physical cultivation, but mental cultivation. And every Indian can only survive if we do it together in unity. So yes, there are some basic points we can identify with our identity, and places that we can talk about that might be praiseworthy. But at the end of the day, if we don't make it what we want it to be, our children have no future. So the few points I wish to offer here today: unity. That has to be a rallying call if there is a real desire to preserve anything that is called an Indian identity. Then, my second call, back to the churches, mosques, and temples. Let us go back to the system that created us as a people, where we are allowed to sing songs of freedom and unity in the church, the temple, and the mosque, and let the prayers of thousands of voices fill this country. Next, education. Let every man, woman, and child be educated. Let us build support systems, friends. I call on us to recognize that let there be no child without education. Trust me, there are many. I call on the IAC. Work towards morphing yourself. Become a core activist group that will not look at political interest, but will look at the interests of your constituency. That will work for Indian matters regardless of who's in power. That will aim to deliver solutions and issue critique regardless of who's head of government. Change the way we do things or face decimation is what we have to realize. Friends, we have to create an action list that must include the following. As I said, let no child be without education. Governments can raise fees all they want and can bring paltry $10,000 vouchers all they want, but let the Indian core group set up a banking system that can provide funding can provide farmers and can provide people across this country with a real access that something will be not dependent on government, not dependent on who is in power, but totally self-sufficient. Build that mini bank system as India and other countries have. Let no child be a beggar. We are just 700,000 odd people. And we can say we have beggars. We have more land than people. We have more wealth. Yeah, it's in 5% of the people's hand, but more wealth than people. So, let us ensure that no child is a beggar. And let no man or woman commit suicide. Every child that commits suicide, if we all can think for one moment that when that child commits suicide is your very own child, then start doing something to stop that trend. Let us, again I say, let us make that rallying call. And sir, let us make that rallying call. Let us take it across this country. Sweep through our country, through the villages and towns. Don't allow the politicians to do it. They are going to screw you again. Through the villages and towns, place our people first. Stop the elite egos that claim to want to represent Indianness but are only interested in your votes. Friends, as I conclude my presentation of identity and perspective, I know that I've examined some harsh topics, but many times we come here and we just praise what's happening and we criticize one pocket or one race or the other. I am not here to do that. I see Indians, if there is such an identity that we can refocus on, that can rise holding the hands of everybody in this country. I see that Indian identity that can rise leading, sharing, caring, and working together in a country that was given not by Indians or blacks or but given by God for us all to use, to share, and to care. As I conclude, I remind, please stop being cheerleaders and be leaders. Stop being cheerleaders of those who climb the pedestal of Indianness and ensure our children have a space in this country of ours. That we can have a space that does not vilify or dehumanize our birthright. Let us look among ourselves for that leader, that man or woman who can take the cause of the people, who can take the small man and make him a real man. That is my charge, that is my call, that is my perspective to you, sir, and to your group, to take whatever you can, morph, and get some help for our people who are struggling across this country. I conclude by reminding, I am not placing the blame of the state of Indianness on any one political system. Everyone, more so, we are to be blamed for being cheerleaders. Take the cheer off. Be leaders. Thank you.
Honorable Minister, members of the Indian Action Committee, friends all, before I begin to make my presentation, I want to reflect on the slides that you put up. Evan put up earlier, because he did put up the slides. On one of the slides was the first set of villages to which indentured servants came. And among those villages was Radhay, right across the river on the west coast. And that was Gladstone's estate. But there is a particular history as Guyanese that sometimes we don't take. We don't know, and we don't take it seriously, and we take it for granted. Because the new technologies of the Industrial Revolution that was taking place in Great Britain at the end of the 18th century, they were producing a number of innovations, and sugar itself was being made in blocks in Guyana in the factories. But at Vredenhoop, the vacuum pan technology was first employed, and the name Demerara crystals arose because for the first time, sugar was crystallized at Breeden Hoop. And that is why Demerara crystals has been patented by companies abroad, and they're profiting from it. And we need to take this into consideration. The second point I want to make is in relationship to Samaj Parker, because sometimes we associate sugar with Bukas alone. But Samaj Parker had a set of estates, and Bukas had a set of estates up to the 1970s, up to nationalization. The third point I want to make in relationship to the slides that Evan put up is on what we call low Gs. I want to remind you that what we call low Gs were not constructed for the East Indian indentured servants. They were first the homes of the slaves. So what became the bongyards were first the nigger yards in slavery. And in a number of the Indian villages, during the first 10 years of indenture, from 1838 to 1848, most of the villages were multiracial. You had both groups, African laborers on the sugar plantations and Indian laborers on the sugar plantations living in the very villages. And this is the kind of history that I am hoping that we could begin to teach in our schools. So when I was asked to speak here today, I was contemplating what should I say. And I said to the organizers that I want to talk about the context within which East Indian immigration came to the shores of Guyana. Because sometimes, as Iac said, we sometimes do not remember context. We are not Indians, we are Guyanese. And there were people here before Indians. And there were people here who produced the contours of the villages. The African slaves. Go back and read History of the Guyanese Working People. And Iac mentioned Walter Rodney as Guyana's foremost historian. He also mentioned the work of Clemcy Charan. And Clemcy Charan do not fall far from Walter Rodney in terms of his own ethos. So today, I want to look at the question of the expansion of East Indian immigration after 1848 and its interconnectedness with the second slavery. I will go on to explain what I mean by the second slavery. So, reflection, every time we reflect and analyze our formative history, we must understand the trials, tribulations, and the travails of the indentured servants when they came. And the trials, travails, and tribulations of the indentured servants were not much different from the trials and travails and tribulations of the slaves. In fact, when the first set of Indians came to Highbury and those plantations, they were told that they had to be tied to specific plantations, which was something that came out of the apprentice system in 1834, when slaves were told that they had to be tied to specific plantations. And it was the Africans out of slavery who came to the defense of the East Indians and said, no, you cannot treat them that way. So we have to understand the intertwinement and the interconnectiveness of our history. History is also important because it helps us to understand the slave-like conditions of indentured servants on the sugar plantations. And Utinka wrote a book called Sugar, Slavery Without Slaves. Slavery and indenture, therefore, were connected. Abolition and emancipation for slavery, we have to remember, did not free the planter class from the mentality of ownership. Sister Mary Noel Menezes, a historian an Amerindian Portuguese of Portuguese origin who taught history at the University of Guyana for many years, wrote this: "The Abolition of Slavery Act freed the slaves, but they did not free the slave owner from the mentality of ownership. For the slave owner's mind was conditioned by centuries of looking upon human beings as chattels, without mind, body, soul, identity, or history of their own." My charge to you today, and I'm taking a word from Jung, I know his father quite well, is we have to free our minds from the colonial mentality. We have to free our minds from the colonial mentality. This anniversary, 100 years since the end of indenture, therefore affords us the opportunity to shine light on something that we don't normally shine light on, which is the indentured contract. For students of history, go back, read Duarte Knott. You have the details about the indentured contract in that book, The History of Indians in Guyana. We don't pay attention to the details. As we do that, we will find that it was imposed after 1848. After 1848, 10 years after slavery ended, by the same forces whose minds were conditioned to think about non-white workers as chattel. My task, and I'm a social historian, so my task is to point to the connection between profits and exploitative social and economic arrangements. That is still the guiding principle. This kind of expose is especially important in the Guyanese context. After 100 years since the end of indenture, and 179 years since the end of slavery, note I'm talking about both, because we have to talk about both. We have not solved the problem of the planter mindset. We are yet to solve the problem of the plantation and planter mindset. We will not move forward until we address these historical structural problems. And these are historical structural problems. This is why I chose to go back in my PhD studies to study the period 1838 to 1900. Because it is crucial for us to understand the structure of our everyday social relations. We have to remember that Guyana is not a blank state. It was not a blank slate when the indentured contract was imposed. The African Guyanese working class had been staking their claim for dignified treatment as soon as slavery ended and before slavery ended. And the planter class had to adjudicate the claims of the African people for equal dignity within a global context. Sometimes we forget that there is a global context, wherein the cost of production for sugar and market price were driven by the expansion of slavery. It is in this context that I invoke the concept second slavery. But before I do that, we are producing sugar and it is costing us above 30 cents to produce US. And we can only get 15 or 16 cents. It's a problem. We will not run our house that way. And so we have to have a national discussion on these issues. So what is the second slavery? Since the idea of the second slavery may be new to many of you, let me take some time to explain this construct. The study of the second slavery is gaining global currency in academic circles. I know this is not an academic circle. Because of the structural deficiencies that gripped most of the former colonies, wherein the peoples of African descent, peoples closest to blackness, and indigenous communities have been seemingly permanently shunted to the margins of society. This is a problem. We have to address it. This is especially the case across the Caribbean, the United States of America, and in several areas of Central and South America. The term second slavery is used to explain the rapid expansion of slavery in the 19th century. The 19th century is 1800 to 1900. And that is immediately, what happened immediately following the abolition of the slave trade in 1806. Students sometimes do not recognize that the British had abolished the slave trade in 1806, and that in the British colonies, slavery came to an end in 1838, which is 34 years after the slave trade was abolished. During the 19th century, we need to understand that slavery, although abolished, intensified in non-British areas of the world, especially in the United States, which became the home of Jim Crow segregation, and more significantly, in that period, the center or the leader of global cotton production. In Brazil, which became the center and leader of global coffee production, and in Cuba, which became the center and leader of global sugar production. Now, Guyana, until 1815, Guyana was producing three main crops: coffee, cotton, and sugar. After 1815, Guyana started to produce only sugar. Guyana became a monocrop economy until the East Indians established the rice industry at the beginning of the 20th century. The concentration of global commodity production of these products became pivotal in the growth and expansion of industrialization in Britain and northwestern Europe. What do I mean by that? Industrialization in Europe is connected to what we were doing here and what we do here on the plantations. There are several lessons to be learned from this development. First, global commodity producers and free traders defied the imposition of the abolition order. There was a manifold increase in the demand for African slaves. Second, slave production of raw materials for industrial processing in Britain and northwestern Europe led to the expansion of factories and the demand for cheap wage labor. Third, innovative technologies were transferred and agricultural production intensified in the slave zones. And this helped to propel the need for cheap labor or the expansion of slavery. Fourth, the disconnect between white and black peoples in the Americas expanded, and this led to the birth of scientific racism in the USA as a means of justifying slavery. This was the global context within which East Indian indenture was established. We cannot forget these things because our racial problems is also connected. And we have to go back, we have to understand, we have to study. And we can only solve our problems if we go back, we understand, and we study. British Guyana, therefore, was caught in this global cauldron. I'm calling it a global cauldron. British Guyana, being a British colony, was denied the possibility of expansion of slavery after 1806. At the time of abolition, the colony had a mere 100,000 slaves. When, according to former Prime Minister of Trinidad, Eric Williams, he said that for the land capacity of the country, for the fertility of the soil, in 1800, we needed 2 million people. We only had 100,000 workers who were slaves. Guyana was caught in this conundrum. This is what is called the labor problem by the historians. Faced with the shortage of labor, Guyana chose sugar and moved away from coffee and cotton. Land and labor were consolidated. No one can deny that Guyana needed more labor. This is still the case today. We still have more land than people. But the story of the African and East Indian Guyanese, the majority groups of our population, is related to the struggle for cheap labor. The insertion of East Indians into the labor force in the first 10 years of emancipation was intertwined with the struggles of the African labor force on the sugar estates for improved wages and living conditions. These early trade union struggles are properly covered in our history, and I'm not going to dwell on that. As we mark 100 years since the end of indenture, we need to pay renewed attention to the structure of social and economic relations that gave birth to the continuation and expansion of indentured immigration between 1848 and 1917. I use this periodization because it is my belief that we need to pay more attention to the factors that led to the imposition of the draconian indentured contract after 1848. We must consider the context. This is especially necessary since many of our communities today continue to suffer from the vestiges of the demand for cheap labor, which, incidentally, was the original reason for slavery and indenture. Let us look at some of these factors that I identify, and I can't list all of them. 1. The first experiment with indentured laborers in 1838 was terminated because of the neo-slave nature of indentureship. Remember, it was suspended in 1839 and restarted in 1845. And it was suspended because the first arrivals were treated in similar manner as Africans under slavery. Secondly, the bulk of the African workforce, and we have to correct some of what is written in history. Walter Rodney tried to do this. He tried to do this in his work. The bulk of the African workforce had remained on the sugar plantations after emancipation in 1838. And they demanded better wages and working conditions. They remained, worked on the plantations, and remained in plantation houses, living on the plantations. So there were sugar strikes in 1841, 42, and again in 1847, 48. According to Walter Rodney, these strikes served to strengthen the resolve of the planters to seek a new workforce, because they needed the Africans to work for cheaper wages. So indentured laborers were brought, and the indentured contract was imposed to ensure that they were paid cheaper than the Africans were prepared to work for. Thirdly, we have to remember that even in the 1840s, we have global free trade. So the Sugar Duties Act, which was passed by the British Parliament in 1846, equalized sugar duties between slave and free-produced sugar. It meant that sugar that was being produced by slaves in Cuba and sugar being produced on the plantations in Mauritius, Fiji, British Guiana, and Trinidad, and Jamaica, they were meeting on the world market. The cost of production of the cheaper slave-produced sugar affected the price at which free-produced sugar could be sold. And this acted to push change at the local level in British Guiana, where the result was the imposition of the indentured contract, because you had to tighten the noose around the indentured contract laborers. And so what we had was a depression of wage rates to match the cost of slave-produced sugar. This sent the sugar industry in crisis in the late 1840s. The result was the demand that the majority Afro-Guyanese sugar workers take a 25% pay cut, which they refused. So what happened? When the Afro-Guyanese decided in 1848 that they could not take the 25% pay cut, there were enough indentured served laborers, Portuguese and East Indians, to take their place on the plantations. As a result, the majority of Afro-Guyanese sugar workers left estate residency en masse. And this is how all the villages we are seeing on the coast, Buxton, Victoria, all those villages became overpopulated and overcrowded. So 1848 was the year of change. In the intervening period, although indentured immigrants were tied to specific plantations, there were no rigid contracts. But this was not good enough to meet the challenge for complete control over the labor process. What is worthy of note are the rapid changes, and we have to make note, and I got this from Dorkanal, the rapid changes that took place in the indentured contract. The indentured contract changed in 1846, in 1848, 1851, 1852, 1853, 1854, 1862, and again in 1863. The most drastic changes began to occur in 1848, after the defeat of the sugar strike. These were followed by the changes in 1851 to require the indentured immigrant to be contracted to an estate for 5 years. That is bound with an employer he or she selected. What we have to understand is that each of the change in the indentured contract represented the tightening of the noose around the neck of the indentured immigrant. Each change brought them closer to the conditions of slavery. Two of our historians, Walter Rodney and Alan Adamson, helped us to understand the draconian nature of the indentured contract and its application in the everyday setting. One, Rodney explained that the working of the indentured code was of such that if a laborer was not at work, the expectation of their employer was that they were either in hospital or in jail. There was no middle ground. An unexplained absence from work was classed as desertion. And like all other breaches of civil contract on the part of the laborer, absence constituted a criminal offense punishable by a fine or imprisonment. Adamson, on the other hand, explained that the indentured immigrants were immobilized and insulated from the rest of the society through carefully devised laws, which were designed to keep them unattached from the rest of the population. Insulation and immobility, he said, were maintained through several devices, the most effective of which were the vagrancy laws and a clause in the immigration ordinance which forbade an immigrant to leave an estate without a written pass from the manager. And since the law only authorized but did not compel the employer to issue a pass, it could be used to keep the immigrants in a state of virtual imprisonment. Now, this is like apartheid. How many of you know what was going on in South Africa under apartheid that came to an end only a couple decades ago? So we had apartheid right here. And the East Indian immigrants suffered from apartheid right here. The legal sanctions imposed through the indentured contract on indentured laborers, therefore, distorted the labor market. We did not have a free labor market. It imposed an alternative workforce, which by dint of circumstances, according to Walter Rodney, actively supplanted the African workforce and curtailed the struggle for equal dignity in the colony, which began with the free villages. This is why Alan Adamson wrote a paper called Stagnation and Village Decay after the 1850s. There's a reason for these things. Today, and I'm concluding, Mr. Chairman, today we suffer from the structure of this history in several ways. First, a racial and economic divide, which has now become an important subculture, is directly connected to this history. Secondly, the major class division in the East Indian community between rich and poor is also directly related to this history. Go into the recesses, the inner cities in Port Moran and some of the villages. Drive through some of the sugar villages. One car can only drive a street at a time. They were produced so that they cannot develop, that they cannot enter the modern world. We have to end this structural stagnation. Thirdly, the colonial mindset is still present in the recesses of our society and acts as a driving force. We have to end the colonial mindset. We have to educate our children from secondary, primary, secondary, and university level about the true history of all our peoples. That is the only thing that will set this country free and will propel development. Fourthly, the global international economic climate that helped to shape the economic and social beginnings of the East Indian community is still with us. We can see this in the perpetual crisis in rice and sugar. And I can say that without doubt, because I am a researcher of the rice industry. And I have been researching the rice industry for some time. And it is in perpetual crisis. The Venezuela deal kind of arrested the crisis. But Yoge's father and myself went back some ways. He was the president of the Guyana Rice Producers Association, his father. We will move forward as a people and as a country when we develop the fortitude to understand and speak about this history. If we continue, as my elder and mentor, Brother Iac Public said some time ago, he said this in Parliament. He said, all we are doing is throwing dead cats across the fence at each other. And if we continue to do that, if we don't begin a conversation with each other, we will continue to go downhill. We have to speak to each other. We cannot speak past each other. We have to speak with each other. Each of us have to listen to the other. Friends, I would like to end by saying that we have tremendous work to do. And people like myself are willing to put our shoulders to the wheel to do this work of re-educating our communities and creating unity, creating national discourse, creating cohesion in our country. Because more than ever before, we need national discourse and we need cohesion. Thank you.
Christopher, I will now address you, and then Mr. Singh from GAWU.
Good afternoon, everyone. I know you're just off lunch, so I hope I can keep your concentration for a few minutes. I saw the program. I know the program has been rather flexible. I saw the most recent version of it indicates that I'm speaking on the implication for the national economy arising out of the decline. Well, the decline, as I interpret it, would be the decline in sugar. In the earlier version of the program, I'd been asked to speak on rice as well. Now, I think as far as rice is concerned, in 2007, the production of rice was 298,000 tons, sugar was 266,000 tons. Currently, or at the end of December 2016, rice was 600,000 tons, which was an increase of 101%, while sugar, that was at 266,000 tons, is now at 2016, 188,000 tons. It is projected to be much less than that in 2017. So, at best, the decline in sugar has been 29%, rice has been 101%. It's interesting to look at some of the characteristics of rice and sugar. Rice is essentially a private sector operation, though it still has elements of the feudal system where you have the lord of the manor and the peasant farmers producing and selling to the major operator. Rice tends to be more capital intensive in comparison with sugar, although one can suggest that part of the big problem of sugar is the lack of appropriate capital expenditure. Because if you were to just look at capital expenditure, the monumental failure of Skeldon project was 200 million US plus. That, as we know, has been struggling. In terms of capital investment as well, earlier this morning I was speaking with a senior manager of GAWU a couple of years ago, and he was telling me that the East Demerara estates were the best prepared for mechanization. Yet, if you look at this apology of a paper called State Paper on the Future of Sugar Industry, it does not address the question of mechanization. Both rice and sugar produce for the domestic market and are also significant exchange earners. Sugar at one stage used to be a substantial source of foreign exchange, and if we were to look again at the relative contribution, or the absolute contribution, sugar has declined from 137 million United States dollars in 2006 to roughly $70 million in 2016, because, of course, the first thing you do is meet the local market. What we see is that in terms of foreign exchange earnings, the rice has increased 235%, sugar 51%. Now, those are some rather depressing statistics, and perhaps support the notion of the downsizing of the sugar industry. Let me briefly say, and Raymond Gaskin was asking me, well, what do I say about sugar? If we keep the present framework in place, all you have is subsistence farming for the majority, the absolute majority of rice farmers. My view is that the architecture where you have these farmers going and lining up, sometimes for days on end, to get the rice, the paddy sold to a few big millers, should be restructured. My own view is that perhaps these farmers need to form themselves into a body, whether you call it a cooperative or whatever form, and take the whole process forward where they themselves are the exporters and operate with a view to making significant revenue. The present situation does not guarantee them any real success. There is also a relationship between rice and sugar. Sugar produces and protects the environment, the low-lying coastal belt, with a drainage and an irrigation structure that protects not only the rice sector but the housing communities in the coastal belt. In terms of their overall revenue, data is not available either for rice or sugar to the national coffers. If I had to speculate, I would suggest that it's not particularly significant. However, in terms of employment, in terms of foreign exchange, in terms of social value, neither of these industries can be ignored or dismissed. Because if you were going to take the tens of thousands of persons who depend directly and indirectly into these sectors, they have no livelihood in the rural areas. What then happens? The social implications of the future of sugar and its consequence on rice need to be considered. And let me, as I remember at this point, say this as well. This state paper says nothing about the new economic sector on which we are embarking, and that is oil and gas. There is a misunderstanding, I believe, as to what the Dutch disease means. There is not a country that without extremely sound planning that can avoid the Dutch disease. Because it simply means this: if we start getting a significant inflows of foreign exchange, and this is what happened in Holland and the Netherlands, this is why we talk about the Dutch disease. If that happens and your currency appreciates, I know we in Guyana are accustomed to a depreciating currency, but if we have this inflow of foreign currency and your currency appreciates, what then happens to rice, sugar, bauxite, gold, diamond, forestry, that are all primary commodities that are traded in foreign currency? It means that the Guyana dollar value of those produce will in fact go down, and there are going to be serious implications, which is why I come back to this paper. I'm absolutely disappointed in the lack of thought, the lack of common sense, the lack of intelligence that has gone into the preparation of this paper. We cannot be talking about the future of any industry without thinking what will be the impact on the rest of the economy. The paper does not explain what it means by economic prices. If one were to take that it means on the open market, it's an open market, but it's a price. Sugar, nowhere in the world we hear about sugar is sold at 12 cents per pound in the international market. Well, the trouble with sugar is that wherever it is, it's a subsidized price. It is not a market price. Nowhere produces sugar at that kind of price. What the paper says is we're going to Albion Rose Hall, Blaymont, and Iflock Wales. It means East Demerara goes, and as I said, the person who spoke to me earlier today was telling me that the East Demerara estates were the place that was most ready for serious mechanization. He estimated, and this was a senior person, he's now working in the Caribbean, he estimates that it is 85%. Now, this paper lacks vision. We are back to the same situation where all we do is produce raw sugar. There is absolutely no value added. There is no downstream benefit from this plan. So it really, really means absolutely nothing. A couple of years down the road, what we will have, because of economies of scale, this doesn't work either, and it's a downward spiral. It's clear that we have to think where we want to go. GAWU has made, over the years, GAWU and the government, we cannot exonerate the PPP from the decisions that have been made in sugar. Some of the decisions that have been made are mind-bogglingly incompetent. We have to decide as a country the extent to which we want to subsidize any industry, whether it's sugar, whether it's rice, whether it's bauxite. We must not forget there's a permanent subsidy that arises in a place of Linden when it comes to electricity. Nobody talks about that anymore. It is, apparently that's off the table. So we as taxpayers, to what extent do we want to subsidize an industry that isn't clear, that doesn't have a clear future? And a clear future does not mean that you can see everything. We can't. But a clear future must mean that we have thoroughly examined all the possibilities. We look at all the economics. We look at the labor market. Do we, in fact, have the labor market to keep all the estates open? The answer is probably no. Which is why you have the factories, but you don't have the throughput, you don't have the canes to put through those factories. We have to decide. The unions have to decide. Do we want no job at all, or are we prepared to take maybe jobs that pay us less than we want, but what can be afforded? These are objective questions that have got to be addressed. The problem I have is this. The chairman of GAWU is our renowned economist, Dr. Clive Thomas. Dr. Clive Thomas wrote in his column, Development Watch, on January 5, 2014, all hopes for a rational, considered, and ordered reform and reconstruction of the industry are lost. So why did you put him there? To prove himself wrong? He's not going to want to be proven wrong. So, did somebody read what Clive Thomas said about the sugar industry before appointing him as chairman of the board? That all hopes for a rational, considered, and ordered reform and reconstruction of the industry are lost. That is not a serious... To put Clive Thomas, the head GAWU, was clearly to be the undertaker of the industry, unless he had renounced that article that he had published. This paper on the sector ignores, and it is one of the great ironies. The paper was presented to the National Assembly. It doesn't say a date. That's how bad it is as a piece of paper. By Honorable Noel L. Holder, Minister of Agriculture. It appears that Noel Holder did not read the AFC manifesto. in which they talked about mechanization, in which they talked about value added, and in which, and I am quoting their language now, shifting the Demerara sugar estates and the West Berbice estates to ethanol. That is their word. Those are their words. What happened? Did Noel Holden not read the AFC manifesto? They went on. This was the 2011 manifesto. You know, politicians have a way of reborning. So if you look at the 2015 manifesto, it may be different. It went on, ethanol blend of 10% by 2013, anhydrous E15 by 2015. That means you mix the, if I'm wrong, please tell me, you mix gasoline 10%, ethanol produced from the agricultural project by 10%, and you shift the cost. Has the AFC abandoned their principle, their intellect as well as their principle? I mean, how can we have a serious discussion and a debate with persons who don't read their own bloody paper? How can we? And as I said, no one must be exonerated at this stage. Because the unions, they never really came up with a sound plan. If you want to counter A, you have to produce B. Where is that? It has not happened. The way, and I've gone, I live in Ogle. I've seen how fields have been abandoned and the starting back of agriculture ain't easy, even in a kitchen garden, let alone in a place like tens and hundreds of acres. The demise had been predicted by Clive Thomas and possibly executed by Clive Thomas because he's chairman of the board. The question is, how do we get that serious discussion going when everyone has a different song sheet, reading from a different page, even if they're reading from the same book? And as I said, in my view, at this point in time, no industry will be unaffected by the advent of oil. We know we haven't heard about, we haven't seen the contract and so on, but the outlines are there. The Minister of Natural Resources indicated what the outlines of the arrangement are at a meeting with the Guyana Chamber of Commerce and Industry a few days ago. I don't know whether the politics of our country are such that we can have that sensible discussion. I don't know whether the time is not past for that sensible discussion. But all I can say is that whatever time we have left, we've got to make the best use of it. And to that extent, I'd like to congratulate the Indian Arrival Committee on this rather ambitious program. Evan Persaud is always very ambitious. You're expected to do 3 days in one with Evan. But it's got to be done, because if we don't do it, the future of Guyana, even with oil, is as insecure as it is with oil. I thank you very much.
My name is Aslim, as the chairman said, I'm the Assistant General Secretary of GAWU. And we've been asked to talk about our views on the challenges of sugar and our thoughts on the future. It's difficult to come after Mr. Ram, who would have said quite a mouthful, and I hope I can do justice to the presentation. So, next. Or just a little bit of history. I think it's well ventilated this morning, but sugar is the oldest industry. Sugar is the oldest industry in Guyana, over 350 years old. Responsible, I think we all know this, for the country's multi-ethnic makeup. And it's contributed, like Mr. Ram said, it's been an infrastructural contribution in terms of empoldering the coastal lands, or a large area of the coast. And it's made out of contribution. And since 1976, it's been state-owned under the auspices of the Guyana Sugar Corporation. Okay, the data here talking about sugar importance. This was taken from GAWU's data, which was presented to the cabinet late last year, and which was shared with us at the end or early part of this year. And it's fairly straightforward. 70,000 people employed according to GAWU, between 70 to 80,000 directly dependent on the industry. The industry facilitates about 1,900 paid farmers, and the GAWU estimates about 7,600 are dependent on this type of farming for their livelihoods. Outside of that, there are 300 local businesses who supply goods and services directly to GAWU, and 30,000 persons indirectly connected to the industry, and it says the fisher farmers, taxi bus drivers, and others. So the industry, as it is, touches about over 100,000 Guyanese in a population of 740,000, whatever it is. One can see the significance of sugar to the country. It's a contributor to GDP. Mr. Ram did make mention of the foreign exchange contribution. GAWU did put in its paper that it's probably the largest net foreign exchange earner of all the industries. It's maintenance of a healthy and safe environment through drainage and irrigation and health services it provides to sugar workers and families. And it's probably the only renewable energy provider in Guyana. As we all know, through its Kellan plant, it provides co-generated power from bagasse. Next. All right, now the challenges. Mr. Ram did make mention this last year. You had the lowest production in about 26 years, 183,000 tons. There's arguments, it's arguable, one can argue whether it's poor management, some people say mismanagement of the industry for it to be found itself in this state. There's been a decline in productivity in the state. People did draw attention to this. There's been a 40% decline in land productivity in the last decade, a 10% decline in factory productivity in the last decade. There's been heavy instability. The prices that we see for sugar, it's now tied to the world market and it will become more unstable come October this year when the EU sugar reform is finally completed. And the EU, which is our biggest market, their prices are expected now to mirror the world market price. Their high costs, someone did mention this morning, we produce sugar at about 30 cents a pound. We get about, I think last year we got about 18 cents US a pound. So there's a big margin there. And then the industry is said to be highly indebted in 80 billion. On this score here, the 80 billion, there's a lot of misinformation going around with this 80 billion. When an examination is done of the debts, short-term liabilities amount to about $10 billion, which means if the debtors come tomorrow, immediately payable debt is about $10 billion. The largest chunk of the debt is about $40 billion, which is a pension liability, which is an accounting entry, and there's an argument of whether it should be that much. And in recent times, we've been seeing a more demotivated workforce in the industry. There's a lack of motivation, a lack of commitment of some workers to their job. Next. And then we've seen the government, this has been also a big talking point. the government support, well, between May 2015 to 2016, 23 billion. For this year, we're making it 32 billion. And then prior to May 2015, about $20 billion from the previous administration. The point to note here, like Mr. Ram did make mention, state support to sugar is not unique. In fact, our research informs us that all countries subsidize the sugar industry in one way or another. Just recently, Thailand, they gave $3 billion to its sugar industry to help it to support capital investments and work in agriculture. And we all know about the infamous sugar levy. Between 1976 and 1996, about $60 billion adjusted, when adjusted for inflation, has been provided by the industry to the treasury. And then outside of that, you've had contributions by the industry to releasing of former sugar lands for housing and so on. Next. Wales, which we all know what happened there, the government in early last year said it was going. Wales, it wanted to close Wales at the end of the year. In announcing or in justifying the closure, it said it was the highest cost estate. That wasn't true. In fact, the ISUCO data for 2014, which was available, found it to be the third costliest estate. Wales employed about 1,700 workers from the estate manager all the way down to the bottom. And outside of that, there were 850 farmers who supplied canes to that estate. Well, what is interesting is that the Sugar COI, the Commission of Inquiry, said that there should be no closure of estates, recognizing the social and economic impact in the communities should closure occur. And there was no socio-economic impact assessment to determine what would be the effects of closure and to devise alleviation measures to address them. I can say in Wales now, there's one of the colleagues who works in the office, lives in the Wales area, and he tells me how dim the situation is there now. Many people, one of his relatives was a worker at the estate, and since the end of cane cutting rather, at the end of last year, he hasn't been able to work now almost 5 months in the new year. And his family is helping to support their family in buying food and so on. Wales was also touted to be the launching pad of the re-entry of guys who created on sugar ventures once again. And they talked about rice, aquaculture, fruits, cattle, and so on. In fact, so far, nothing has been done. I think just recently they've now started to plow the land for rice. The other areas, I don't think they've begun to address them as yet. As far as I know, the last thing I saw that the study for aquaculture was still being conducted, and I don't know if the consultants have since finished that thing. As far as I understand, they haven't finished anything, and there'll be no work in the direction. There was also talk about giving workers displaced workers their land to do farming. There was a sort of a meeting about a few months ago, 2-3 months ago, where a handful of workers were invited and offered land at the extreme end of the cultivation, where it is difficult for them to get there, the land development costs are prohibitive for them, and then there's no market for their produce. Guy Suku did a document which was shown to us at the end of last year and talking about the plans for non-sugar ventures. And what you saw from the numbers that Guy Suku produced and the assumptions that they put in that plan, they're very much pie in the sky. And I'll give you an example which one strikes me all the time. Guy Suku said that they plan to do dock at Wales. And every month they will sell $300 million in dock. I don't know, my information is that is not a viable thing. Even on rice, they said, look, we'll make $70 million profit. Darren Kumar Siraj, who was there representing the PPP, when he examined the figures, said they were completely out of place. So there's a lot of disbelief in the figures guys was produced on these matters. And then we've had this sad experience with other crops in the past. From the GAWU perspective, we endorse what they said in the COI, that if you want to go in other crops, then there's a lot of area of suitable land which is not being cultivated, that these things can be pursued and you can have experimentation and so on. Next. Now plans of 2017, which was announced previously by the President and then restated in the state paper, which was printed 2 months ago. There will be, the government envisages closing Rosal and East Demerara at the end of this year. Between the two estates, about 4,500 workers are affected or employed. Again, likewise, I talk about workers being made farmers. However, so far, no examination has been done at any of the two estates to determine what crops can be grown viably, if they can be grown, what are the market prospects, what are the costs, and what are the revenue potentials, and so on. So it's kind of shooting in the dark. Also, there's a talk about the sale of skeleton there. There's 2,200 persons employed. And now the paper talks about the government whether reimbursing or taking over the drainage services which GAWU currently provides. GAWU said in the paper, I think it costs about $600 to $700 million for the drainage service they pay per year. Separately, the paper, I don't know if this is very clear in the paper, but the documentation the government shared with GAWU, they stopped also, or there's proposals here for the health center, the dispensaries run by GAWU. GAWU means the GAWU Agricultural Research Unit, which is the research unit of GAWU, which talks about cane breeding and so on. And the Port Moran Training School, regarded as the premier training institution in this country, and some people say in the Caribbean, they will either be, these areas will either be closed or handed over to the government for responsibility. Now this is what we see an estate is, and we see the estate as the hub of the communities where it operates. And we see the estate, there's a connection to the religious institutions, the mosques, the temples, the churches, the business and state institutions, banks, post office, so on. There's the markets and the shops and so on. So in this, we see, and then when you talk about any estate, they're the hub that support the wheel of the community. And if you take away the hub, this entire thing crumbles. So when one talks about closing an estate, we need to consider not just the people who are there employed and their families, but the many thousands more who also depend on these estates for their livelihoods and well-being. Next. Now, our thoughts on the future. Now, GAWU has two problems. One, it has a problem where its cost is too high, and then the other problem it has is where its prices it receives are not economical. So there's a cost, there's a need to reduce costs and there's a need to increase revenues. We see here, talking about, we see GAWU having and sugar Guyana has some advantages relative to the other Caribbean islands which produce sugar still. We have arable land. We still have a large labor force. We have an expensive irrigation compared to what you see in other countries. We have fresh water, we have factory capacity, we have know-how. So in view of these, what we call comparative advantages, we see the industry needs to move away from being a raw sugar producer. Mr. Ram talked just now about the state even envisages GAWU remaining a primary producer. We see that the industry needs to move into secondary and possibly even tertiary products and talk about now moving from a sugar to sugar cane industry where the entire plant will be utilized in producing products. One of the first things we see GAWU and sugar needs to do is to return to those practices that have had a positive role in the past. Many of those practices are still undertaken by farmers who cultivate canes. And it baffles us why GAWU doesn't do that. And then mechanization. Mechanization is something that needs to continue in the sugar industry. Mr. Ram made mention of Enmore being one of the more advanced estates for mechanization. In fact, GAWU in the documentation said, look, that for us to mechanize the lands which are available for mechanization will cost us $14 billion. And if we do that, our costs in 1 year will decline by $6 billion. So in 2.5 years, we will pay back that capital investment of $14 billion. and reduce costs by 6 billion, which works at about 20% of the cost as it stands now. Yes. Now, going forward, what we see, cogeneration, which we have at Skeldon and which we believe can be expanded in. At Skeldon, we know that there's another entity called SEI running the plant. And SEI, in an interaction with GAWU a few months ago, told us that they receive a range of prices from GPL. And at the lowest price Skeldon receives from GPL, last year they would have gotten about $9.5 billion, notwithstanding that sugar production was lower than it should be at Skeldon. And the guys took in a document which it shared with us, said that the cost of set up a cogeneration plant is roughly about $7 billion. So there's some viability in that type of business. And in fact, Gaisuku has feasibility studies to the effect which says outside of Skeldon it's viable to do cogeneration Albion, Raymon, and more Ifla. So this is one area where we see Gaisuku can get into and can make money. In fact, the Commission of Inquiry said that cogeneration offers Gaisuku the best possibilities for the future. Outside of that, there's a possibility of producing refined sugar. This is something we've spoken about a long time now. In CARICOM, we import about 200,000 tons of refined sugar. If we can produce at least 150,000 tons, which is about 75% of market demand, then we can argue for the CET protection to be levied on white sugar coming from extra-regional sources, which is about 40%. In fact, the study done when white sugar prices are about 20 US cents a pound, 21 US cents a pound, found that the internal rate of return for a refinery, and this is a brand new refinery, to be about 23%. Now white sugar prices are about 32 cents a pound, the last time I saw it. Packaged sugar, which is direct consumption value-added sugar, this is the Amrar Gold and both crystals and so on. Gaisuku has installed capacity of about 50,000 tons right now. The packaged sugar, they get 33 US cents a pound, the last time I saw, and without utilizing the capacity. So one of the things we're talking about is utilizing that capacity. If there's greater market demand, then enhancing that capacity. Alcohol, ethanol, there's a market also there for raw alcohol for rum producers. And then there's a talk about ethanol. Mr. Ram did mention of the promises of having E10 implemented in Guyana. And then there's now health food production. It's fairly small right now, but in North America especially, there's talk about a darker form of brown sugar being more healthy, and bottled molasses, which they say if you use a spoon a day, it has its health effects, or enhances health. And then there's some other ventures which we saw, fiberboard and so on, which you can use for produce using bagasse. Now, we recognize that financing will be a challenge and government can find all the money. While we did this government support, there can be an involvement of private sector, whether local or foreign, or whether through concessional loans and other arrangements that can be arranged. Next. Privatization. Now, on privatization, there's no guarantee that the new owners will continue with sugar. And I live Jamaica experience there, I should make this point now. In Jamaica, they sold industry to the Chinese a few years ago. At the beginning of last year, the Chinese just decided to walk away. And the Jamaican government had to run one of the factories. In fact, I was in Jamaica last week. And the government is still there looking and talking to see whether they can have private investors or they will have to take it over back fully. From the point of view of the union workers' rights, we don't see will be respected. Many of the benefits which they receive now through Gaisuku that will not be honored or will be taken away. And then there's an effect on cane farmers for those, and Skeldon, which is thought to be privatized, and there's a 1/3 cane farmer component there. Cane farmers supply 1/3 of the canes, or should supply 1/3 of the canes. Whether the practices which have been in place for some years now will remain, and the support that Gaisuku gives to farmers in terms of funds, fertilizers and so on, but those things will remain or the cost for those will increase. And maybe push farmers out of the business or increase the cost of production for farmers. Next. Well, just to conclude, sugar has faced challenges before. It's not the first time it's facing challenges, and we rebounded. We were reminded that in 1990, sugar produced about 130,000 tons of sugar production, and between 2002 and 2004, it reached over 320,000 tons. In fact, the CBD, when considering a project for Guyana, said in the examination that it did, that it is viable for the government to subsidize sugar from two fronts. One, the employment effect, and two, its ability to generate foreign exchange. And we believe that a joint effort, committed government, and knowledgeable management can bring back Guyana. But sadly, it seems that these elements are lacking, and that's where we're finding ourselves in the challenging position. So thank you.
Evan and the executive of the IAAC, thank you very much for inviting Gogo to make a presentation on the development of the oil and gas economy in Guyana. The number of seismic activities that were undertaken by Anadarko was enough for them to have some relevant information, and they have not shared what their studies have indicated as yet, but officially they are still reviewing it. And yes, they just want to make sure that the border dispute between Guyana and Venezuela has been resolved. Likewise, when the border issue was between Suriname and Guyana, CGX had to wait until that was resolved before they got back into operation. So I think it's a similar manner, Anadarko is waiting on that as well. But Anadarko is located in a big block, and I foresee, we all foresee that there is some level of operation taking place there within the near future. So, looking at the companies that we have that are interested in the oil and gas sector, aside from ExxonMobil, maybe between now and the next 15 years, we could potentially see about 4 major operators operating offshore Guyana. You don't see names like BP and Shell and BHP Billiton and those companies, but the way the oil industry operates is that companies change hands over time through the stock exchange. So you never know, you could be seeing within the next year or two or so, you're hearing about companies which you did not initially hear about in the Guyana market. So this is just to indicate to you that that was supposed to be 2017 to 2019, you would see some activities taking place within the Kaichoro block there. And as you can see, where the Stabroek block is, where the Kanji, and where the Kaichoro block is, there's no dispute here. That's smack down in the middle of our offshore resources. Next. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about the orange juice potential, because this is where you'll be looking at Tulau and Eco-Atlantic exploration activities, and they have been very active. They have been ensuring that they raise the capital, and they wanted to make sure that they are part of this newfound resource in Guyana, and if there is any resource within their block, they want to be able to ensure that they are close to the operation of Exxon. And if you look at the red spot there, you can see where the Orandu block is and where Eco-Atlantic oil and gas is. It's very close to where the Exxon discovery was made. Now, that's all about the discovery, and all of that information is within the public domain. But if we are going to move this sector forward, and if we are going to move it forward in an effective manner, we have to speak about the governance of the sector. Now, currently, the oil and gas sector, the hydrocarbons sector, is governed by the Ministry of Presidency, the Ministry of Natural Resources, which has now indicated that they have a Petroleum Directorate, which is a department within that ministry. There's now the development of the Petroleum Commission of Guyana. The Ministry of Finance has to play a role in it. The Ministry of Legal Affairs has to play a role, as well as the Ministry of Business. Now, these are all government agencies, but civil society and the non-governmental sector needs to play an effective role on the governance of the sector. I'm going to give you an example. The Petroleum Commission bill has been read in Parliament. It is now at the select committee. And maybe at the next Parliament sitting, or the other one, that bill could be passed. If that bill passed in the manner in which it's currently, I'm not sure if all of the comments that were submitted by different organizations were taken into account, because we weren't privy to see what the final draft is to be taken to Parliament. But the initial draft, which was sent to us as stakeholders within the industry, as interested parties, as non-governmental organizations, as civil society organizations, it does not speak to the effective management of the oil and gas sector. The Petroleum Commission of Guyana is set up to be an independently governed organization. When I say independent, I don't mean independent of government. I mean independent of government politics. It is supposed to be an organization that is semi-autonomous, governed by a chairman, a board of directors, and then you have the necessary technical expertise. The current bill, if anybody reads it, in the state in which it was shared, gives tremendous power to the minister at any given point in time. Now, if you read that bill, and you pick up any other act that governs any other semi-autonomous organizations within, and I'm going to use the example because I've had experience there, within the natural resources sector, JGMC or the Guyana Gold Board, the bill resembles it on many different levels. The wordings are the same, the number of directors are the same, the penalties are the same. You can't have a drafted legislation from 1980 or 1970 try to manage a modern 2017 newfound resource. You have to think strategically. So I'm hoping, and we all should take note of this, that within the governance of that Petroleum Commission, that it is done in the most transparent manner and it is done in an effective manner. Now, the reason I have Ministry of Presidency here on it, I do believe that the Minister with responsibility for petroleum development is still the President of Guyana, and that responsibility is handed down to the Minister of Natural Resources. And now the Minister of Responsibility will give policy oversight decisions and policy from Cabinet and from Parliament onto the Petroleum Commission. Now, Cabinet has a subcommittee that is made up of the Minister of Natural Resources, the Minister of Finance, Legal Affairs, Business, and Public Infrastructure. And then there is also the Parliamentary Select Committee on Natural Resources. So we have to make sure that those who are in the driving position of decision-making and policy-making do it in a manner that benefits the country in the long run. So I just wanted to show that these are the key agencies here, but there are others which we also need to, who need to play an effective role in this process. My other slide is really to talk about economic linkages, because we need to have investment in order to develop the oil and gas sector. And I'm not talking about the offshore operation by ExxonMobil and Tullow and all those other companies, but we need to have incentives here so that local people can be able to generate some level of interest in the oil and gas sector and see where services can be provided, where they can tap into it. We have come to the point where we understand that there are a lot of local private sector organizations and businesses that have an interest in the oil and gas sector and could potentially provide services that are needed for the oil and gas sector, but they aren't aware of it. They aren't aware of what they can do. And we are hoping that over time, with information sharing, with knowledge gathering, that this can be brought to the front of the local private sector. The investments that need to be done here, it need to cater for the local country and not just for the companies that are coming in. And investment needs to be done in drilling. There is more activities other than offshore in the oil and gas sector. There is onshore activities, that is in the Takatu Basin. There isn't anything going on there right now, but I believe it was about 10 to 15 years ago, there was Takatu Oil and Gas, which was a local company that had done some activities there. But we first discovered oil here in Guyana, in the Takatu Basin, many years ago, but it wasn't done in a commercially viable manner. The discovery wasn't feasible. But there are international players who are now looking to partner with local companies to go back into communities. And I say communities because where these deposits of resources have been studied to be in, indicates that there are now communities there. There are indigenous communities within those areas. So we have to make sure that if we go there, we don't end up with, hampering the lifestyle of people within those communities. And we also have to cater for long-term benefit. If we are going to produce 100 to 200 barrels of oil from the offshore operation, what do we do with that oil? What happens with the resources that we are garnering from that oil? What happens to the wealth of that oil or that resource that we're getting? What do we do with it? What does the government do with that resource that it gets? I'll speak to that a little bit more when I come to sovereign wealth fund. But you must be able to ensure that your society of today can benefit a bit from the resources that we have today and also cater for future generations. So it's not just catering about today, it's also catering for the future. And you can't put aside everything for the future generation. You have to fix what needs to be fixed today as well, so that our people can live well. Now, this speaks towards the sovereign wealth funds. And the term is used sovereign wealth funds because sovereign wealth fund is not a new concept to Guyana, and it should have never been a new concept to Guyana because of oil and gas. Our country, while we have been dependent on the traditional agriculture for many years, leading up to about 1999, and thereafter with the price of commodities such as gold, reaching high prices, and diamonds and such, our economy became dependent on the other natural resources sector, the gold sector in particular. And during that time, we generated a lot of foreign exchange. And every time the minister would go to Parliament for between 7 to 10 years, you would hear, and Mr. Speaker, the highest earner of foreign exchange was the gold. But what did we do with that gold money that we had? We took some of it, we put it into foreign bank accounts, we took some of it, we did some infrastructure work, some for education, some for health, we took some of it and we put it into the consolidated fund. We cannot do that with this amount of money that we are going to be receiving within the future. Now, the contract between ExxonMobil and the government is not made public for various reasons, and current Minister of Natural Resources will tell you why it's not made public in a private conversation. They have their reasons, and he also indicated in November last year that the government is not going to change that contract. If you sit down and you listen and you think about it, he has his reasons, the government has their reasons, and you have to appreciate that. ExxonMobil, the contract was signed between 1998 and 1999. You can't blame any government for signing a contract of that nature, because at that time, we needed the investment. I don't think there was anybody in government at that time that could sit down and negotiate with ExxonMobil. It probably was a standard generic contract that these companies bring and present, and government sign them, and then activities take place. But the government does have the willpower to change that contract at any point in time. But as I said, it's a decision that they will have to make sometime moving forward. They do have the willpower, and we do appreciate that ExxonMobil is here. We have to respect that investment. And the agreement, as we know, information that we know is that the first 75% will be recovery for ExxonMobil, and then the next 25% will be shared 50-50 between the government and ExxonMobil. So effectively, we are going to be getting about 12.5% of whatever revenue is coming out of the first phase of the development project. But that could change within the long run. So it's not something that we will have to live with forever. So it's through the life of the projects. Now, you have to focus on a sovereign wealth fund, and whether you call it a heritage and stabilization fund, or a reserve investment fund, or a development fund, or whatever you call it, it has to be developed effectively through proper fiscal management and legal management and administrative management, so that it has to be governed in a manner that at no given point in time we can do what we do with the consolidated fund here in Guyana, and with the striking of just gathered resources. And as I was speaking towards the governance of it, it must be done by government bodies, and it must be done by supervisory bodies. That is why countries set up legislations, they set up organizations such as the Auditor General Office, the Guyana Revenue Authority, you have the Ministry of Finance, and then you have external auditors that you will not only use that privately set up in Guyana, but depending on the level of investment that you have with your sovereign wealth fund, you develop it over time so that you have made sure that your level of investment gives a greater return to your country for future development. Now, I'm going to speak a little bit about the challenge of Guyana. And the main challenge that we have here since the discovery of oil and the announcement of oil in Guyana is information. As simple as information sharing and gathering, we don't have that. Information is very tight-knit. If you're not within a certain circle, you don't get information, but the information should be shared so that people can know what are the opportunities and the benefits of getting involved in the oil and gas sector. We need to train our people. We don't, let me stick up in there and put it back. Yes, we do need financial analysts in the oil and gas sector. We do need economists in the oil and gas sector. We do need the lawyers in the oil and gas sector, and we do need policymakers. But the people who are going to drive this sector, who are going to work there, are the welders, are the divers, are the services men, are the caterers. Those are the people that we need to start training. And we have the infrastructure to get it done. We have the technical institutions around here. All we need to do is ensure that they are trained. We have the right institutions. We partner with respective institutions from the Caribbean and further afield and start getting our people trained towards a new sector. It's not as easy as I'm saying. It's a long process because you have to ensure that the right training is provided for the right mechanism of people to be within that sector. But we need to train people at a grassroots level, so to speak. Not just at the University of Guyana and everybody's coming out with a diploma or a degree or whatever the case is, but you need to train people, and we have those around the country. So that's what we need to do. We also need to build on our infrastructure. Our infrastructure needs in Georgetown is old. The government has made it very clear that Port Georgetown is not going to be able to service the development of the oil and gas sector. It's an old city. And our wharf facility and the port facility are old. So they're moving towards new facilities outside of Georgetown. But the existing infrastructure can only cater for so much. So you need to build new access roads, you need to build new bridges, you need to provide services that whilst it will be used to service the oil and gas sector, it can also use to develop linkages to other sectors, what is called positive externalities. And we also need to develop new policies, new legislation. Local content is very important, but local benefit is more important than local content. And how do we get local benefits? If we develop proper local content policies. Our organization, GAWU, when we first met the Minister of Natural Resources, we took to him what is called a local benefits accord, which is you sign an agreement with a company. We're not telling you to change the agreement, but what you can do is speak with the company other benefits that they can provide. Community benefits, educational benefits, health benefits, training benefits that they can provide along within their contract, so they're not going out of their contract right now. So we need to make sure that those policies and legislations are effective, and we need to ensure that the people who are part of the process is more or less doing it for the benefit of the country. And then you look at business opportunities for Guyana. Now I'm going to speak a little bit about natural gas. We've been talking all the time about oil, and everybody's interested in oil. But the greatest short-term benefit that we can get from this project that's going to be developed within the next 3 to 5 years, and forest oil is expected to be poured at 2020 or thereabout, but commitment given both by the government and Exxon. Within the first 5 to 10 years after that, we have to start looking at the natural gas sector. Because it is only then, after production start, then we'll be able to fully assess what is the quantity of gas out there, or associated gas, so to speak. So we really can't speak about it now, but we need to start looking at the studies that are there to see what can happen with that. The greatest benefit, as I said, within a short-term period, for the first 15 years of this operation, is having Guyana benefit from natural gas. And how do we do that? Is ensuring that there's some form of facility for us to have that gas physically here, whether it's in the form of a pipeline or some other format. Now, 120 miles to do a gas pipeline is very expensive. The only thing that we can say here about it is that it's not impossible. It's just that it's very expensive. But just think about it. Our greatest hindrance, infrastructurally, to our development has been energy. We have to import all of our fossil fuel. We are doing some amount of renewable energy with the solar, and we're doing some amount with wind. We don't have a hydroelectric facility. We had one which is powering Latem and some small other ones around the country, but we do have a lot of potential in hydroelectricity, but we don't have that as yet. And if within 15 years or less, we can have natural gas being used, imagine how that could change our manufacturing sector and how it could change our commercial sector here in Guyana. And that's when you start to speak about the linkages between industry. So you don't speak about sugar in isolation, you don't speak about rice in isolation, or bauxite in isolation, or gold, or forestry. You speak about all of it in an integrated manner, because you have to look at the potential of what one sector can do for the next. And all will be integrated into a fully working mechanism for this Guyanese economy that we have. Now, I spoke already about onshore exploration. There's activities that are going to be taking place within the Taktu Basin, and there are also activities that could potentially take place within the Mahadeo area and also in the Quarantine area as well. Now, let's talk about the oil refinery a bit. There was a presentation on Wednesday by an international consultant on the oil refinery. An excellent presentation in the sense that the presentation delivered what the presentation wanted to deliver. But that's not a presentation nor an economic model for a refinery that speaks to this country in a holistic manner. It speaks to us developing a refinery in an isolated manner. And a refinery can be developed to cater for the needs of the country. And the questions I asked after the presentations, which weren't within the presentation, is what are the products that we could develop from our refinery? How do we develop our petrochemical industry? What is the refinery going to be set up for? Yes, it's very expensive, and any refinery in any part of the world will be expensive. But what is the cost, or what will be the price of the crude at the time that we will be ready to develop that refinery? Because we can't develop a refinery tomorrow or next year or whenever. We have to wait until production starts to see the type of crude, and the crude has to be consistent. The quality has to be consistent. There are many variables that are integrated towards the development of a refinery. And when you look at the economics of a refinery, you have to look at the magnitude of the refinery that you want to develop. Trinidad and Tobago, our neighbor, has a refinery. And at no point in time have their local production of all their oil fields been able to reach the full potential of that refinery. They have to import raw crude to reach the demands of their local refinery. We do not want to be in a state like that, because, as we like to say, it will be another white elephant developed here and there. So the idea of a refinery needs to be revisited, and it needs to be revisited in a manner where there are viable economic options. And we also need to look at our markets that we're going to develop. What happens to that oil after it reaches the FPSO, or it goes onto that storage tank and goes somewhere? What ownership would Guyana have of it? How do we trade in that stock of crude? So we have to develop our people to be able to understand this and know what we're talking about. So the activities of the oil and gas sector is wide. It's not just about making policy, it's also about understanding the finances and economics of trading in a crude, because crude is another commodity which is traded. And more or less, that's my presentation. Of course, I must give a plug to GAWU. I know you've all heard about us before, but do take a look at our website. And the reason we come out and we hold our public lectures and we hold conferences and such is because of our mandate. And our mandate, and it's within our slogan, states we are there to protect, promote, and advance a responsible. The key underlying word is protect and responsible development of the oil and gas sector that we have. Thank you very much.
I want to talk essentially about this country here, where we're at today. We're in a bad way. We're in a bad way. Whichever way you look at it. Whichever way you look at it. There's nothing really positive that you could see, except all this gap about what's going to happen in 2020. And much of which, of course, is all nonsense. Nothing is doing. You're being taxed to death. Sugar is in decline, we heard that already. Rice is in decline. Rice 2 years ago it reached a peak of 687,000 tons. Now it's down to about 520 after 2 years. We hear there's a lot of gold. Gold production at about 700,000 ounces. Half of it from the foreign people, the Australian and the Canadian. But when they ship gold from here, that money doesn't come back here. You must know that. They just ship it up to head office. And it's not sold to head office. It's just shipped out the place. And the other gold from some local people, they also smuggling. They're smuggling about 500,000 ounces a year. The other set of them. So although they talk a lot about gold, there are a lot of problems there. You go to the bauxite. We give away the bauxite to Rusal and Barbados for free. I don't think they paid $1 for it. Not a ruble. Not a single ruble they didn't get it for. I think it's Samaj give them. Samaj is more like give away things. You always like to give them what they want, he said. The linen operations, he had given that to Iron Gold. Says Iron Gold that sold it to Gossai for 46 million US. We get nothing out of that. We are so dumb in this place. I mean, them who hold them kind of higher office, not me. Them who are there, they give away everything. We don't even get royalties from Gossai. We don't get royalties from Rusal. In what part of the world you can go and fluctuate people natural resources without paying royalties? You can't go to Russia. You can't go to China and fluctuate nothing. They'll execute in the morning, let me tell you. But here you can come and fluctuate everything. The Canadians go with the gold. The Australians go with the gold. The Arabs go with the gold. The Russians go with the bauxite. The Bishanians go with the forestry. Burma go. What's going on here? What's going on here? In any proper country, you know what happened to these people? In North Korea, execute ministers down here. Give away the whole country. Are you telling me in 2020 everything will be happy? Everything will be fine? I don't believe it. I don't believe a word of it. And the reason I don't believe it is because when you look at the experience, based on the experience, you know that in 2020 nothing will happen. Some politicians might do well. But I was looking at this Sarah thing. And it struck me, you know, as a legally trained person. And one of the problems in this country is that nobody don't read all this thing, not even the members of parliament, not even Sarah people. They don't have time to read all this. They don't hold like a book. They don't have to read it. They don't have time for this. They don't read comic book and mirror and all kind of nonsense. They don't have time to read this. But I read it. Every word, every line, more than once. And it struck me here. This is what struck me. That Sarah can go to the court without you, without the owner, for an ex parte order, them alone going, to put a restraint on your property. They can go to the court. Where an application to by an officer of Sarah that it appears to the court on evidence tendered by the applicant, consisting or including evidence admissible by virtue of 40 days, and there are grounds to believe that the property was obtained unlawfully, then the court shall put a restraint order on it. That's it. The court shall make a restraint order prohibiting the respondent, as the owner or any other person, from disposing or otherwise dealing with it. Well. So they go to court, you're not there, this is ex parte. They go alone and say that thing where you see built there. I think that it's built on the proceeds of unlawful conduct, and put the order on it. That's section 28. 28 says the restraint order may be made on an ex parte application to a judge. You hear them alone going. Amazing, eh? Amazing. When you go to 34, 34 is something that I was thinking about it. At any time when this restraint order is in force, and you want to appeal this thing to remove this order in your property, you have to provide in an affidavit income and your source of income for the last 10 years. You have to go now and prove that you work hard and build this thing. The burden now shifts to you, the owner, to go and get this order lifted and produce all this paperwork for 10 years. And there's a part in here which says that if the court is not convinced of this 10-year paperwork you bring, then the court may issue a seizure order. All gone, Lake, it's gone. When you're trying to get it back, you lost it right there. This is it. The court may issue a seizure order. Read it. All this thing is in English. All this thing is in English. This is dangerous. You always wonder sometimes why this economy is not performing. One of the reasons why this economy is not performing has a lot to do with the business class. You know them set of people. Their confidence in things, their whole mindset, the mood they're in. They're really not no mood now to invest in nothing. And wait till they reach Sarah, they're going to be in a more depressed mood. All of them will need Valium, let me tell you. But coming down now to that thing here about the same Sarah. I've never read anything like this, 41. This is a dangerous piece of law. Dangerous piece of law. The director or other authorized officers may apply to the court for recovery order against any person believed to be holding or have held property, including where A, the person has not been charged with an offense, B, the person has been acquitted of the offense, C, the charge was withdrawn against him, but he still lost it. The mere fact that you were never ever convicted, even if you were being charged and freed and acquitted, it makes no difference here in this law. It makes no difference. We have to challenge this thing. A lot of it is like that. And the reason why we challenge this thing is because we still have in this country something called the Constitution of Guyana. This is the supreme law. Whether or not you like it, they said Bonham law, I don't care, it's law. This is the Constitution of Guyana. And until and unless it's changed, this is the supreme law. And anytime this thing contradicts this thing, it can't stand. Y'all hear me? Anytime this thing contradicts this thing, it cannot stand. And this thing violates this thing. Because in this country, property is protected under 142 of the Constitution. And you cannot go ex parte and take away a man's thing, no other thing. Not even North Korea, they don't do that. But North Korea, no private people don't know nothing, I don't think. You cannot go ex parte to a judge and take away a man's property. He didn't even know about it. He just heard about it, he read about it in Kaito News. And when he go to get it back, and he can't convince the judge, he already lost it now, for good. What is called a seizure order. The problem in this country is that a lot of people don't know about all these things that's going on because people don't have time for this. People trying to make a living, you know. I got time for all this because I don't work. I got time for read all these things. But people don't have time to read all this. People trying to make a living when the day comes. But we have to look at all this. What is Sarah is doing, what Soku is doing, because these things impact on the economy. They impact on investment decisions. There's no investment in this place going on, as far as I know. And many of you know that the economy of Guyana is essentially two economies. The legal, formal economy that we know about, and a big part of it, the illegal economy, what they call the parallel economy, sometimes they call it the criminalized economy, that's like Thomas' word. So the economy of Guyana is comprised of these two sections. As far as the formal economy is concerned, that's in decline. Production is done, exports are done, the currency is being devalued, the foreign exchange situation is getting tight at 600 million only. The banks not giving you money for foreign exchange. And the illegal economy, a lot of those who operate there have been pulling back. Plenty of them fighting the DA close to DSA, and everybody laying low for the time being. Because they're laying low, except the sawmill man, he's laying low. Except he. Oh, he's the only one he's laying low, but he's hiding. Oh, so that part of the economy laying low, except the sawmill man. The formal economy is not doing well, and that's why we have this problem in Guyana. A lot of unemployment. A lot of unemployment. A lot of people believe if oil comes in 2020, you'll get all this oil, you won't know what to do with it. Gossai, you'll have to get a sovereign wealth fund. You'll have to manage this money. You have to bring people from Goldman Sachs. Because we don't know how to manage money. All of them are wrong here. All these hustlers from New York. They're there every day. The market full of them. They come for thief for hustle. Vultures. Goldman Sachs people, them alone can invest your money. They want to invest your money. They want to invest your money, carry to New York to go, they invest in Google and Yahoo and all kind of nonsense. Zuckerberg and Twitter and all nonsense. That's where money can invest. They know how to invest money. They keep telling you. Them alone know Goldman Sachs. Them alone know. They're there all the time telling you, we could invest in sovereign wealth fund, and just do it. We can do it. And we don't know what to tell these people. I know what to tell them in waterfront language if they come by me. But Trotman is such a nice guy, he wouldn't do it. He's such a nice guy. He gave a guy a contract to tell him about some refinery. And the guy come and said, no, this thing is 5 billion, you can't do it. And the guy collected his fees and gone. Could you imagine this guy? A big contract, a big consultable refinery. And what he brought? He brought some old projections from somewhere, from Angola and Nigeria, and he bring it here and get money again. And he gave a presentation that this thing is 5 billion, and the rate of, you know, how to talk about rate of return and all these big words. All nonsense. All nonsense. And we are calling all these people. What for? To do what with? We don't even know what we're going to get. Gossai said they get an 87.5% of everything. For starters. They get an 87.5% for starters. And we get 12.5%. Oh. And when the price of oil is 55 or 60, and the cost of bringing up this thing is 70, and have a deficit, what does the contract talk about carry forward losses next year, like the Angola contract, what it says? You got to keep recouping. You got to keep recouping till the end of time. Read that, why we have to see the contract so we can read it. So we can read what it says. And then the contract itself is not confidential, the document. The document is not confidential. What is confidential is confidential information about Exxon. We don't need to know that. We don't need to know that. Scientific information, financial, we don't need to know that. We need to know the basic outlines of the thing, what they signed to. I think it's the Jagdo government signed this thing, right? 99, what year was that? Who was president then? Janet? She didn't know what she was doing. She didn't have a clue. She didn't have a clue, and he had less of a clue. The same thing. The people don't have a production license. You sign sharing and you don't have a license? And you come 16 years later and now tell me you find the thing? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That 16 years later you find it? You know what 6504 says? You got 11 years, buddy, to find this thing, or else you walk. This is it. No more than 2 extensions. Absolutely, you walk if you can't find nothing. You come 16 years later and tell me you find a thing, I look like I'm dumb. I'll chase all of them away. All of them if I had the authority. which I might get one of these days, who knows? They won't like to see me. They won't like to see me. I was speaking to some trade unionists yesterday how things bad. And a man asked me what I would do if I had the authority, a trade unionist. I said, you won't like to see what I would do if I had the authority. He said, well, what would you do? I said, I would declare martial law. That's what I'd do. And straighten the whole gang. He was amazed at the answer. Zia-ul-Haq declared martial law in Pakistan. You need a man to declare martial law, eh? I'm straightening this whole gang. I'm telling you, that's what you need here. Thank you, sir, for inviting me here today.
I'm here to talk to you on behalf of the Caribbean Voice, which is a non-profit, non-funded NGO emanated out of New York with an incorporated branch in Guyana. Our main focus is suicide prevention, anti-domestic, and advocacy on anti-violence. The presentation I'm going to cut short is not going to be one that is going to get you off your feet. Rather, it can be a little depressive when you hear the figures that I want to present. In 2014, Guyana was ranked #1 in suicides per capita worldwide. And here we had the world attention because that's a serious thing, but not for a good cause. According to the World Health in 2014, Guyana suffered 42.2 suicides per 100 deaths per persons per year. In effect, there were about 333 suicides per year in a population of what? 750, 100,000. But it's also estimated that at least 25% of the suicides go unreported for several reasons. Now this could mean that there were at least 425 suicides per year in 2014. However, empirical evidence revealed that unreported suicides were higher than the 25%, and that actual suicides were higher than 425 annually. And at a global estimated 25 attempts per suicide, Guyana would have almost 11,000 attempted suicides per year. Not being a clinical psychologist or psychiatrist, but because of some training that I've been fortunate to receive. One would recognize depression, uncontrollable anger, family discord, couple disorders, domestic violence, alcoholism are the main causes for suicide. Of import is to note that based on the track record we have, based on the evidence so suggested, it is possible, very possible, that suicide and the suicide rate will increase in Guyana, because the experts are saying that depression, uncontrollable anger, family discord, couple disorders, finances, legal issues are the causes behind suicide. So with the closure of the sugar industry, the sugar estates rather, with the loss of income and the domino effects that will be prevalent, one can safely conclude that the suicide rate in Guyana will increase. In fact, Guyana has the second highest rate of teenage pregnancy in the Caribbean, with an estimated 97 teenage girls between the ages of 15 and 19 out of 100,000 becoming pregnant each year. In fact, 1,000 becoming pregnant each year. Also, the average Guyanese drinker, here, this is interesting. Raymon, this is interesting. The average Guyanese drinker consumes 13.7 liters of pure alcohol per year, with 6.1% of the population considered heavy drinkers. And these are World Health Organization 2012 figures. With respect to domestic violence, of the more than 60% of women who were involved in a relationship or union, 27.7% reported physical abuse. 26.3% had experienced verbal abuse, and 12.7% experienced sexual violence. Media reports for the year were not given. Yet, it is noteworthy that all these figures could be higher because of underreporting. I wouldn't want to bore you to let you, because all of us would have understood this living here. The stigma of reporting rapes and other domestic abuses. Because obviously, I don't want to knock the forces and the police like Raymon could do, because he's no longer working after 5 years. But there's a stigma attached to reporting rape, and you know the kind of hassle. When you report to the police, it's like you're a victim. In 2000, a landmark study, The Shadow of Death, a recent study of suicides in Guyana, incident causes and solutions, reported that the majority of those committing suicide were males below the ages of 35, predominantly East Indians of Guyana. They were likely to be poorly educated, employed in low-income occupations, reside in the same community all their lives, and to be less likely to have children. In Guyana, almost all of the suicides are committed by ingesting poisons like insecticides and by hanging, and are the results of abusive, dysfunctional relationships, teenage affairs and pregnancy, rape and incest, and inability to deal with the problems, lack of coping skills, self-esteem, unbearable pain, physical or emotional, and which generally give rise to awful agony, depression, feelings of helplessness. I would wish to take this opportunity to, since I've not been so praised, I did not see anything in the public. If the government of Guyana has indeed been taken into consideration what these effects will cause to not only the 10,000 immediate employees, but those of their families and children and the extended family. In fact, and I'll talk briefly on that, when the suicide rate was escalating on the Essequibo coast, it was said that, and these were like young teenagers committing suicide, it was posited by Essequibians that because of the fact that the rice farmers were taking out huge loans, that their children could not have coped with the rice failure, and as a consequence, they were committing suicide. I do not wish to sound as if I'm a prophet of doom, but based on the experience and empirical evidence that we have already received, and with my experience in the Caribbean Voice and the Caribbean Voice in a whole, we are positing the view that unless something drastic happens, the suicide rates and the attendant domino effects will escalate in Guyana. Mr. Gaskin was at the forum when we discussed on March 13, when we were talking about the Rosal Estate closure as an event. When I posited the view that, with all due respects to women, that prostitution, child molestation, domestic abuse, depression, and all the other attending conditions will be visiting the sugar areas like in Berbice. I was only there on last Wednesday and Thursday, and I've already seen forms of depression stepping in. It is a serious issue, and it is time that we become vocal to advocate, to remind, to suggest to the government that this is a serious issue. The economists and the other experts would tell us, Mr. Gaskin reminded us, you can't be bailing out $1 billion per year in an industry because it does not make economic sense. But you need to also look at what you're bailing out with the $1 billion. Because if you'll be saving the lives of 10,000 people multiplied by 5, multiplied by a community, then you have to bail out the industry. You have to find, if not bailing out the industry, some other economic viable form of ensuring that this high level of depression and this premised suicide does not enter into these communities. In 2017, the World Health Organization, good news. In 2017, April, the World Health Organization website quoted on April 4th, updated this year, said from their latest tabulations that Guyana is no longer, give us a round of applause, Guyana is no longer number one. We have gone down to number 4. We are no longer at 44.2 per 100,000 per capita. We are now 29 per 100,000. We're all intelligent, brilliant people, professors, eloquent people here, and the message will get across. It's a simple translation. From 2012 to 2015, because these results were released in 2017, but they're really 2015 figures. We have been able to reduce the suicide rate, and we've been able to, which is a good thing, move down from number 1 to number 4 in the world. Although the latest tabulations indicate a steady rising rate of suicide in Guyana from 2000 until 2012, there is a notable decrease between 2012 and 2015. According to the website, Guyana's suicide figure has been climbing since 2000. Now, 62% of the suicide cases come from ingested liquid, poisonous substances, and a recent breakdown of suicides per region. This is interesting to note. Please note the suicide breakdown per region. Region 6 accounts for 30.9% of the suicide deaths in Guyana. Region 6, a 3-estate region, Skeldon, Albion, Rosal, is recording 30.9% of suicide deaths in Guyana. Region 3 is second with 22%, a rice-dominated production environment. We're talking Essequibo Coast and the islands. And Region 2, 13.4%. According to the most recent stats divided by gender, men were 3 times more likely to kill themselves than women. Why? Who are the breadwinners most likely in the sugar industry? Who are the breadwinners most likely in the rice industry? Men were 3 times more likely to commit suicide, to kill themselves, than men. Women, according to the WHO, according to the most recent stats, divided by gender, men were 3 times more likely to kill themselves than women. And according to the World Health Organization, each year, 800,000 people die owing to suicide globally, which is the second leading cause of death among 15 to 29-year-olds globally. Suicide is accounted for 1.4% of all deaths worldwide, making it the 17th leading cause of deaths globally. Now, the other part too is very interesting, and I'm quoting the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization cites rural poverty, alcohol abuse, low numbers of full-time psychiatrists, and easy access to deadly pesticides as the leading causes of self-inflicted deaths in this country. There are indications that for each adult who died of suicide, there may have been more than 25 attempted suicide. And Region 3 is among the 2 other regions with the largest prevalence of suicide, with 113.6 per 100,000. It was reported that over the past years, Region 3 accounted for 26.5 cases of the attempted suicide. The point I wish to make is that I am not certain, I certainly do not hold myself out to be one of the experts or the qualified persons that can discuss with the government I know the government has a mental health department that has been working. I would have thought that the mental health department would be the first to receive the figures from the World Health Organization. And I also am presuming that they would have fed these stats through the decision-making bodies. But, like I said earlier, that suicide has been occurring in regions where it's labor-intensive, where they do not lack, they have a lack of, in percentage, a higher level of education. Depression is more prevalent among other things. So, as we are visiting the 179th commemoration, anniversary and celebrations and talks in Guyana, I wish to impart on you that it is vital that we consider the effect that the depression that will be caused by the closure of the sugar industry or by the closure of the estates, Rose Hall, Skeldon, and Enmore, among others, that it will have devastating effects on Guyana. I recently alluded to the fact too that we are not only talking about the workers at Rose Hall Estate and Skeldon out of job, their families being displaced. Towns like New Amsterdam and Periverton are going to be ghost towns. So I want to come back again and make this point very vocal. We need to balance if our human resources are more vital than our financial resources and how we mix the two. We need to make a conscious decision. In some cases, I'm stepping away a little, the economists would say that sometimes for companies to become viable, the senior officers take a tax cut, a salary cut, so that you can still retain some employees. What kind of cut can we take to bail out the sugar industry and prevent the massive depression and suicide that will occur in Guyana? The Caribbean Voice, which, like I said, is a non-funded organization, we've received no grants from the government of Guyana. We have made several attempts to discuss with them how we can help, because we have a group of experts, dedicated volunteers. Unfortunately, however, perhaps we have been deemed, I say this now with no regrets. If you're an East Indian in Guyana and you become not necessarily anti-government, and you voice your concerns, you're being branded a racist or you're being branded a PPP supporter. I am hurtful if I'm branded as any, because I hold no forte for the PPP nor the PNC. And certainly, those that know me, I don't know how you can think I can be a racist. So as an individual, I'm shocked. But this is what happens. For those who don't know, I present a television program, Coast to Coast, on Fridays, among other things. The very first callers would call in. I was talking, myself and some other Indian rival guys were there and we were talking. And the first call is, why you are so racial? What it is that would make one racial to want to be proud of what you are? And I had to tell the caller, friend, if you know me, you would know that I promote programs for Diwali, Pagua, Eid, Easter, Arrival, Emancipation, the Amerindians and everything. So how are we racial? The point, however, is not me. It is that I think, and I ask you all collectively, to let your voice be heard, because this is what is going to happen. The domino effects, if you look like a town like New Amsterdam, the greater population there is dominated by our African brothers. But they rely on the sugar estate. I was born in a sugar estate, Plantation Rose Hall Estate. I gave 12 years of my life in the sugar industry. I'm grateful. I had training from the sugar industry. I'm grateful I served my time. It came a time I had to move on. But those who know, when the factory is not grinding at Skeldon or Rose Hall, and you go into the stores, you would see sparse choppers, as you were seeing when we were attempting the parking meters. And the first salespeople would say, factory grinding, the money and flowing. The bars that we frequent, the eating places and everything. I spoke with a few Chinese restaurant owners Wednesday last. and they are preparing to shut shop when Rose Hall Estate shut shop. Now, what the Caribbean Voice has been doing is that we were training persons for suicide awareness and capacity building. We were promoting and implementing the training of trainers program gatekeepers, which we only last 29th of April was our last training program for 40 persons in New Amsterdam, where we trained at least 7 policemen, people from other NGOs, the region, and the sugar industry. We have been promoting public awareness campaign posters, TV and radio programs, and we champion the cause for community efforts. I wanted to go on, but I realized that we were here a long time, and we are also not very numerical. But I would close by saying to you something. When I was told this, without no evidence, I had Dr. Byro Harry, that we all know, a leading psychiatrist, sat on my show last September, and he said, Nazim, 10 to 15% of Guyanese suffer mental disorder at any one time. That translates to 78,000 to 114,500 Guyanese. But he was quoting the World Health Organization's figures. Now, ladies and gentlemen, how would the World Health Organization get their figures? They are the World Health Organization. They work with the local organizations that compile the figures, and the local organizations like the Ministry of Public Health here and the Statistical Bureau and others, they would submit to the World Health and they would assimilate from their experience. So these figures are basically factual because it's coming from the World Health. It is estimated that 3 to 5% or 20,000 Guyanese of our population has a severe chronic disorder. And that of the 20,000 persons who were seen in consultation in 2015, over 1,000 had required admission. Now, obviously, if you've been told that you have a mental disorder, that by itself is traumatic. There is taboo in being told that, hey, you know, you have a mental disorder. And the first thing is Guyanese have been perpetuated. I took umbrage to a column in the Kaieteur News recently that was saying something and somebody make Jack Deere or somebody wants to drink poison. We perpetuated in the media the ideation of suicide, whereas we're supposed to be responsible. In common parlance, think for crying, then we'll laugh. It is, in common parlance, think for crying, you'll laugh. Because suicide ideation can be formed by the present discussion and giving concept ideas. You present the Werther's effect. That is the copycat effect, and we've all experienced that in Guyana. One person jump off Kaieteur Falls, great thing, the other person gone down there to jump off. You go down in a blaze of glory, right? So we have a mandate, and the mandate is the Caribbean Voice unfunded. Is to try to train people. You see, what we do in Guyana is we push taboo subjects under the carpet. We don't talk about a relative if he's flighty, you know, and you shun him. And you look at you don't call the New Amsterdam psychiatric ward what it's called. You say, Bobby's man house. I don't have an issue with Raymon saying that some of the guys need to visit down there. Because I can tell you this. Mental disorders are curable. You know what is not curable? Plain, simple, ordinary, downright vindictiveness and stupidity ain't got no cure. That is what has no cure. Stupidity. And with respect to vindictiveness, you have to change a mindset. But mental disorder, you can be cured, you can be counseled and other things like that. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't wish to keep you long. I just wish to read one line from a poem, or rather than reading the poem, let me just quote Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, who said, "The heights of great men reached and kept were not attained by sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, toiled upward through the night." We can all understand that. Thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
But what I will do, in a very non-technical way, take you through a study that we did in 2013 that was published by the Institute of Development Studies. Unfortunately, for the type of presentation that we do, we're forced to use
PowerPoint. Why? Because we tend to report empirics rather than what we feel about an issue. Now, as I indicated, we did this study in 2013, and the aim of this study was to answer three important questions. The first question is, when did the economy experience structural transformation? Since it was an issue that was raised several times by our leaders. The second question which we attempted to answer was, what is responsible for growth, economic growth in Guyana? But unlike previous studies, we decided to use a different approach. Now, for this presentation, what I will do briefly is to walk you through the study, and hopefully at the end you will get the gist of the whole study. Now, I will start by briefly introducing the study, after which I will tell you about the evolution of the three important sectors in the economy, then briefly take you through the econometric technique, and then I will discuss the empirical results, after which I will conclude with a policy implication. So, we all know that Guyana experimented with two economic development paradigms. From 1970 to 1985, we experimented with what they call cooperative socialism, whereby the state essentially assumed overall control for all the major production and distribution entities. Are we familiar with the history during this period? We are aware that during this period, the economy took a nosedive, and as a result of protracted economic decline, there was mass migration and expansion of the underground economy, and that we recorded unsustainable fiscal and external balances. All of these factors combined resulted in the country being deemed bankrupt. And so the government of the day was forced to turn to the IMF, who encouraged us to adopt the economic recovery program to liberalize the economy. Now, there are several studies on economic growth in Guyana, and I don't want to take you through each, but just to mention that our study departs from all of the studies on the slide, in that it examined economic growth from the perspective of production, structures, and transformation. Based on our review of the literature, we found that only one study similar to the one that we did was done for the entire Caribbean, and none was done for Guyana. So that we saw this as an opportunity now for addressing gaps in the literature. And we felt also that this study would provide important insights to policymakers who are interested in growing our economy. So that apart from filling the gap in the literature and getting a publication off of this study, we were interested in providing policymakers with some useful insights that would eventually benefit the country. Now, if you go to the other slide, as I say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. This is our economy since independence. And this graph is showing you that some sectors experienced significant decline, while some expanded. Now, the blue line is capturing the contribution of the services sector to our economy. And from that diagram, you can see that the services sector expanded from the 1970 to 2009, suggesting that the services sector was contributing more every year, on average. The red line represents the industrial sector, which showed a continuous decline from 1970 to 1989, after which it stabilized. Essentially, telling us that, look, the industrial sector never took off. Despite our best efforts in the 70s to produce certain goods and services, there was a time when Guyana used to assemble tapir, refrigerator. And this was intended, these efforts were aimed at helping the economy to move from agriculture to industrial activities. However, based on the graph, we saw that we never succeeded in stimulating the industrial sector. The green line represents the contribution of the agriculture sector to our economy. And you will glean from this graph that agriculture essentially struggled from 1970 to 1985 and then stabilized for various reasons. Not enough effort was expended to help the agriculture during the early days. Now, in order to determine whether the economy experienced structural transformation, unlike the casual analysts, we decided to use some scientific tools to establish whether or not the economy moved from agriculture to services or industrial goods and services. Now, from this graph, one would be tempted to assume that Guyana moved from agriculture to services instead of industrial goods. Because you can see that from 1970 to 2009, the services sector expanded. And that type of transformation occurred in some Asian countries, where they moved from agriculture straight to services, rather than to, industrial goods, then services. So one may be tempted to assume that the economy moved from agriculture straight to services. But to test this hypothesis, what we did, we used the most sophisticated techniques out there. And we found that multivariate co-integration analysis was widely used to examine the kind of issues that we were interested in. In essence, what we used was generalized impulse response functions. I'm not going to explain these techniques. I don't want to get too much into the technical issues, but just to tell you what we found. Now, this technique was proposed for us by Persaud and Singh, and it involved 3 simple steps. First of all, testing the variables that you're using for unit root. Then testing the variables to see if there's any long-run relationship between them. And then finally, generating impulse response functions from consistent VAR models. Once you follow these steps, you should be able to answer the questions that we started with. Did the country experience structural transformation? If you go to the budget speeches, for the last 10 years, you would hear leaders say, well, look, the economy transformed based on what the services sector was contributing. But did this thing actually occur? And secondly, if you follow these steps, you would know to what extent each sector is contributing to the growth in other sectors and the overall economy. So unlike the casual analysts who would speak from emotion, we wanted the empirical evidence to answer these questions. And so what we did, we collected data from 1970 to 2009. And we divided the data into 2 groups, 2 sections, to capture what happened during cooperative socialism and thereafter. And then we took it through the test. Based on the first set of tests that we run, we recognized that, look, the variables were non-stationary. And this means that if you use the variables without any modification, you could have spurious results. That's why we run this test. Could we use the variables as is? And based on the test, we say that you have to make some adjustments to the variables if you want to get reliable results. And so we did the second test, which attempted to determine now whether any two sectors were related in the long run. This is important. And we found that there was no relationship between any of the sectors. And you could interpret this to mean that there was no structural transformation. There was no structural transformation. And based on these results, we were restricted now to estimated some unrestricted VAR models to examine the short-run relationship now between the various sectors over time. And what we found, and this basically summarized the whole paper, what we found was that whenever there's growth in the agriculture sector, only then the other two sectors grow. So for manufacturing to take place, the agriculture sector had to grow. For the services sector to expand, the agriculture sector had to grow. So you can't have growth in these other two sectors if there's no growth in agriculture.